All right, and start recording in three, two, and one. All right, and welcome back to the Reserve Squad Midweek Show, a soccer podcast on all things in the EPL from a bench perspective. And I have been away for a little bit. I missed week two. I have also missed week three, and we are at the end of the international break. So I was on a mini break. The club's football went on a mini break as well, and I don't necessarily want to spend too much time really on the international break. The one kind of big news, the only thing that really was significant for U.S. fans was we finally did announce Pochettino is now official, and that has been taking a little while to actually get done, and it was finally announced right before the second game versus New Zealand, and I don't really want to spend a ton of time on either of the games because a lot of people were really upset that the U.S. didn't go into this with a little more I don't know, passion, I guess was the word, or energy, or whatever it was. I mean, we came out flat, but it was two games that we came into this, both friendlies, where there really wasn't anything on the line, and I think they were coming in with an interim manager as well. I think it's just human reaction just kind of kicks in where you're gonna try a little bit. Also, the crowd was flat. It didn't seem like there were that many people actually at the game itself. And, the only team that really did have motivation, at least, the one coach on the other side was of Canada, is Jesse Marsh, and Jesse Marsh has been very public, recently, doing a bunch of media, uh, basically saying he didn't feel like he was treated properly when he tried to, get the U.S. job after, the U.S. fired Greg Berhalter, after the World Cup, and everyone knows that Berhalter did eventually return, though the hiring process for that was a bit odd, and Marsh has been very, very critical, about that. The hiring process and just in general how, U.S. Soccer Federation has been just conducting itself in general, and, he has not been shy on sharing his opinion. So this game mattered a lot to him. Also, Canada hasn't really won on U.S. ground that often, and it kind of showed up a little bit. They were a little bit better at taking their chances. Frankly, it could have been ugly. One of the, I guess, decent storylines in the first game was we started the Columbus Crew goalie, and he had a pretty good debut. He made probably five or six really big saves in that first half. Otherwise, it would have been ugly. We were trying to play from the back. We had absolutely no ideas what we were doing. A lot of really sloppy giveaways really did lead to both goals. It was only 1-0 at halftime, and then they made it two after a Tim Ream kind of error. Uh, the first goal, I believe, was an error maybe from it was either Musa or it was Johnny Cardoza. I think it was Cardoza, and he had maybe a poor touch. Uh, that first half was not good at all. Did get a little bit better in the second half after a couple changes were made. Luca De La Torre came on, and I believe the midfield pivot that was very interesting was Jonas Musa, and it was the player that plays for Middlesbrough now, and now it's not Taylor Booth. Now I'm forgetting who it is, but yeah, I'll probably remember it later on. I liked what they had to offer at least, and frankly, we possibly could have maybe even tied it at the end. We did get a little bit better in that second half, and then we go into New Zealand, and the only thing to really talk about this game was we introduced another new player in Marlon Fozzie, I believe, a 26-year-old. So it was interesting that he was a little bit older. Right back. Apparently, he's at Standard Liège in Belgium, and he had quite a good game as well. And the midfield was a little bit different, or the center back pairing was a little bit different with Chris Richards and Mark McKenzie. Uh, People are going to attack him a little bit for the goal that they conceded at the end, but for the most part, I thought there was at least a little something to be hopeful about in this game. It ends 1-1. That's not really what what U.S. fans would have necessarily wanted, but I think you can look at this a little bit differently and have a little bit more of an open mind. I think at least from what we saw here. Oh, Aiden Morris, that's his name. So we will see what we happens. I guess a couple of weeks from now when the October international break happens, and that really will be. I don't really know what the opponents will be, but that really will be when things actually start to matter. when we'll see if a lot of the people that got places with Greg Berhalter, still keep their spot. Well, we'll see what happens with the new coach coming in. We'll see if we get different formations, different kind of ideas. One thing that we did see a little bit in the friendly with this interim coach was we did see someone play with the number 10. We haven't already seen that. We in the second game we actually saw with Pepe and Florian Balogun played together. There were New Zealand, I don't really know what to think about as an opponent. I believe Mexico actually beat them in their first heading, anyways. And a lot of people don't really think it's a strong Mexican team at the minute. But there was something there. And it ends 1-1, but there was a lot more there than necessarily what we saw versus Canada. So I don't know. That's kind of just U.S. right now is a little bit in limbo. There really isn't a whole lot of enthusiasm, and that is unfortunate because we are late going into hosting this tournament in a couple of years. But they have hired a really big name in Maurizio Pochettino. I wasn't expecting them to go this route, so a little bit surprised there. But I made a joke earlier. Hiring someone from Chelsea worked out for the women's game quite well in their first tournament. So we'll see what happens. What happens here, and that's kind of the only things I really want to talk about with the U.S. side. I'll get to I guess maybe a little bit more of them when we the next international break. I guess it was also Nations League for in England, but again, not much to really talk about outside of maybe some injuries. So Arsenal haven't necessarily enjoyed this international window. Uh, so I guess we'll probably lead off, or when I get to Arsenal, I guess I'll speak a little bit more on that. But I believe Martin Odegaard has maybe messed up his ankle a little bit. Don't really know what the extent of the injury is, but it didn't look like he's going to be fit for the North London Derby. So possibly no. And Calafiori, I believe, for Italy, got injured versus playing versus France. So possibly no Calafiori, possibly no though he's maybe wasn't necessarily going to start, but possibly no Odegaard and we know no Declan Rice because of what happened, and so that's kind of leading off to where we are. So what happened in week two? Arsenal finally get some revenge over basically their new hated rival or the new hated foe in Unai Emery, and so it, I guess like the things to just highlight here, it wasn't Ollie Watkins' best day. The game was cagey, for at least in the first half, but it did pick up in the second half. 2 goals win it. Trossard coming off the bench. The game really could have gone either way at this point. Watkins again had 2 howlers, one in the first half and then one in the second. It wasn't really a howler in the second half. It was basically there was a shot that kind of deflected. I think it deflected off Onana, and it went over David Raya's head off the crossbar. Watkins, in on goal. He could have, if he gets us anything near the corner, I don't think Raya can actually get up and save it. But he hits it basically kind of close enough where Raya is able to recover and get his reflexes right. And what an amazing save this really was. That kept it at 0-0, and then shortly after that, Arsenal get the first goal with Trossard. Really good interchange between Odegaard and Saka. Frankly, when I get to Arsenal a little bit more later on, that they need to figure out a way to get Odegaard a little bit more involved, further forward. Too often, when he's getting the ball, he's stuck on the wing, or he's being asked to basically maybe do an overlap. He's being asked to make runs for players like Saka or someone else. He's not being allowed to basically be the conductor nearly as much as I feel like he should be. But here, really nice little give and go. Saka makes a very nice run to the byline. He's able to get it, and then a square ball into the box. Aston Villa getting really unlucky because I think one of them tries to clear it, maybe even is Morgan Rogers, and it basically deflects off him, and it finds Trossard, and Trossard basically has a really nice first-time hit to find the corner. Trossard had just come on for Martinelli, and Martinelli is kind of a player that a couple of Arsenal fans, at least that I follow online, are starting to kind of be a little, I don't want to say annoyed with, but that might actually be the word. Ever since Arsenal haven't necessarily been able to really counter on teams where the space hasn't really been there for them, Martinelli has struggled since that a little bit, and someone like a Trossard is maybe a little bit better in the final third, at least so far that we've seen. I watched this game with my brother, and when when Martinelli came off, he celebrated that sub almost like it was a goal, and then shortly after that, it basically was a goal. And then they get the second after I believe it's Saka. Saka just gets the ball again in a pretty good spot, but he's not able to. He's got really like three or four people basically ball up, ball hawking him, and Saka then it lays it off to Thomas Partey, and Thomas Partey is able to squeeze it in past uh, uh, the keeper. Shoot, I should. I think it's Emery. I should know the keeper's name, but Emi Martinez. And so I think the but a couple thoughts I had watching this was it wasn't the best a game for Arsenal. Now that said, this is a team that they really did struggle with last year. I think they lost both games, but watching this, I was wondering, is Declan Rice going to eventually maybe transfer or change transition from a midfielder full time to really almost maybe being a center back in a bit of a high line, or how are they going to eventually play with Mikel Merino, with Calafiori coming in? Is he going to be maybe inverted? Maybe he's going to be someone one of your midfielders. You need to find a way to still do a little bit better of the progression, because really the thing that really kept standing out to me is the way Aston Villa lined up in this just 4-4-2, very mid block kind of shape. It almost seemed like it was the right idea to actually beat Arsenal. Now it's not easy. They also another thing that Villa had was really strong ball carrying, both from Morgan Rogers and Amadou Onana. And I just thought this really did unsettle Arsenal a little bit. They could have done better, but the way that they defended in a mid block, Arsenal didn't really have ways to get overloads on the wings. Arsenal did struggle here, and Villa had enough. Villa had enough chances to actually win this game, and they get nothing. They get nothing for it. And for Aston Villa, the storyline was Watkins maybe could have done better. Maybe in different form, the form he was in last year, he would have at least finished one of these. There was a story about that in the first game, and then when I get to Villa later on as well this past week, the same thing kind of happened a little bit. So a little bit of a storyline for Ollie Watkins, but that could be expected. Very long season last year where they were fully reliant on him, and a long summer as well. Doing helping England at least get to the final with a really nice goal versus the Netherlands in the semifinal. So I mean, Ollie Watkins didn't necessarily play that much, but just a long tournament like that, even if you're not necessarily playing, it does sap some energy out of you. So there could be a little bit some of that. But the other storyline to talk about with Aston Villa is the emergence of John Duran. He is really coming along, and I keep forgetting how young he is. And it's possible maybe the idea will be to try to fight for Unai Emery to try to fit him in a little bit more. And so that is kind of where we are with one game, and then we get on to the other half, the white half of London, I guess you can say, in Spurs, and mention how the North London derby is coming up, and Spurs absolutely thumped Everton for 4-0. Sean Dyche might be in trouble here. No Solanke for Spurs, and no problem. Uh, Ange Postecoglou almost went in with a very aggressive attack minded lineup. It was wild. It was wild to see, because it was like Basuma, and then it was like Kulishevsky, and then Madison, and then you had, I think it was Odegaard, and you still had Son, and you had, I think there was even, I mentioned Kulishevsky. There was like another. There was basically an attacking five or six, and you had Basuma kind of sitting deep, and you still had the fullbacks doing what they normally do. This was it. It was basically they surrounded Everton, and it could have been a lot more than it was. Uh, and the only thing to think about is no Solanke and Richarlison, and that did show up to be a problem versus Newcastle. But early on, the Spurs are kind of hit and miss a little bit. They've been dominant in every game that they played in. But they got the draw out the gate versus Leicester in a game they should not have gotten a draw in. Solanke was able to play that game, and probably missed two or three fairly big chances from close to goal. Now, which Richarlison has been able to feature. it wasn't really an issue versus Everton. Everton are in a bit of hell right now because they don't have their their best defender in Branthwaite. Yeah, the back line is a mess. The midfield is a mess. Haven't really been able to get Calvert-Lewin going, and as we'll see in the game versus Bournemouth, they were at least were able to get Calvert-Lewin going a little bit. They had a 2-0 lead, and they still allowed a team to not allow them to get any points. So Everton are a bit of a mess. Spurs been playing well, really, in all three games. It's just and they played well versus Newcastle as well. And so we don't really know necessarily what to think of them, but Spurs still look very strong. They look deep as well. Just the only thing is when you maybe need someone to do a little bit better of a finishing because it doesn't seem like they know how best to use Heung-min Son. And though he got 2 goals in this game, and then Basuma had a screamer. I think that was the first one. Then I think Romero was able to get the other one. No Mickey Van de Van versus Newcastle in game week 3, and we now see what London. We now have the North London derby as the league returns, and we'll see what they have in store. And it's hard to say they shouldn't be. I don't really know where the game's going to be, but it's hard to say they shouldn't be at least favored to not only get something to maybe get a win with no Declan Rice and possibly no Odegaard that we imagine. But this game has been bonkers really for a couple of years now, and I think one was a draw in a 2-2 draw last year, where it felt like maybe Arsenal were a little bit better in the first game, and in the second game, Arsenal had a 3-0 lead, but Arsenal were outplayed in that game. It was very very bonkers in the way Arsenal had that 3-0 lead. I think two came from corner kicks, and I think there was a counterattack, and the counterattack basically happened right after it felt like Spurs maybe had a case for a penalty. They didn't get the penalty, and Spurs even before that had a case for I think it was Van de Ven. He scored a goal, and it was just ruled offsides by VAR intervening and doing that whole is his nose basically offsides. It was a very tight call. And even that said, it was 3-all. It basically went to 3-2, and that game could have gone. That game could have ended anywhere. So we'll see what Spurs bring to Arsenal, and Arsenal have already dropped points. They dropped points to Brighton. When I'll get to their game, and they basically dropped points because Declan Rice got a little unfortunate. He lost his head a little bit. I I don't necessarily think the ref made a mistake on, I guess I'll speak a little bit about that here. I don't necessarily think the ref made a mistake in sending Rice off. I do think the ref, at a minimum, should have been asked to look at the monitor because I think it should have been a double red. To be honest, because of what Veltman does, I don't think Veltman's making a play on the ball. I think he's trying to be sly. I think he knows what he's doing, and I think he's basically trying to because the ball is rolling as well. He can't act even if he kicks it. If Rice doesn't even touch it, and Veltman boots it the way he's trying to, it's not going to be allowed to continue. Anyways, I think Veltman was trying to get a stick at Rice, and that's simply because Rice's first yellow came from fouling Joey Veltman, going to ground, going high, and catching him a little bit. And I think Veltman had that in the back of his mind. And that really did happen early, first minute or so in the second half in a game that Arsenal had. I think they had a 1-goal lead, thanks to Kai Havertz, but Arsenal were in full control. It didn't feel like Brighton had any kind of look at all. And after Arsenal went down a man, then that game really opened up. Brighton basically had 22 shots in that second half, and that said, Arsenal probably still had two chances at the very end, two very good counter chances to, at a minimum, maybe even win the game. So that's kind of where Arsenal is at. Arne Slot and Liverpool, the era it continues a little bit. So they were up against Brentford. Very similar to the half for versus Ipswich. Very slow first half after a couple of adjustments, and incredible second half. Brentford without Ivan Toney, and that really did show. Brentford were able to cause a few danger moments on set pieces in the first half, but second half it was really all holds barred. That said, it was only a 1-0 game and a 1-0 game going into halftime, and that came from basically Brentford having a corner kick and Liverpool doing very well to counter it. It's Salah to Jota, and then Jota plays a nice little through ball, very well timed. It's kind of a shambolic a little bit by Brentford's back line because they lose Luis Diaz making the run, and then Diaz applies the finish. Something that we didn't necessarily see last season, and when we get to the Man United game, Luis Diaz is on a bit of a burner at the minute. He looks an entirely different player, it still was only a 1-0 game or 1-0 game, and there was a moment for Brentford where Andy Robinson is very lucky because I think someone's offsides, but he fouls. It could have been, and without that offsides, that could have been possibly even a PK. He gets very lucky on that. There was another moment where it looked like in Bremo, if the ball bounces a little bit differently, he's possibly going to be able to get behind Kanate, and maybe in Bremo has the pace to maybe get by Van Dijk, but he doesn't really judge the bounce of the ball right. Liverpool is still kind of getting a little lucky. They have like 80% of possession, but there were a couple moments, and then basically, funny enough, Fabio Carvalho, comes on, and he basically gets bullied in open play, gets bullied onto the ball, and it leads to basically the second goal that Salah is able to finish, also found by Luis Diaz. Uh, so 2-all, it really could have been a whole lot more. Liverpool were very good in that second half. I believe Nathan Collins on Brentford had something like 5 key blocks and the Brentford keeper had a number of really big saves as well. This is another game that really could have been very high. Liverpool, I think, had 92% pass accuracy. That's one of the best I think I've ever seen from them, or the highest. And you just the highlights in general, the way that they were moving the ball, it wasn't just side to side. They were direct. They were going long. There was switches, long switches. They were 1-2 touch passing. This was very very slick that we saw, and we saw that a little bit in the second half. First Ipswich as well. So that it's kind of interesting how we've seen a little bit that in the first two halves, and then we'll get to what happened with Man United as well. Uh, and speaking of them, they did have Brighton before that, and basically it was first game in the morning, and probably wasn't the way that Man United wanted to get off to I guess that kind of weekend. So they lose at the very last minute to Brighton 2-1. Brighton get the early goal. I believe it's Danny Welbeck. It's funny enough, Welbeck enjoys scoring against his former club in Man United. But Man United were able to get another back after a very nice run and finished by Ahmad Diallo. And it's kind of funny too because this game to me it was almost a mirror like uh, I guess problem you could say. Man United were playing with Harry Maguire, and it was very easy for Brighton to basically run past United's midfield, to basically run at a very very poor and slow back line with Harry Maguire, where he wasn't really able to be aggressive, and you saw. Awkwardly enough, you saw James Milner sometimes getting, running sprints to 50-50 loose balls. But Brighton had the same kind of issue with Lewis Dunk, and Man United were getting behind him with ease, both with Ahmed Diallo, and then after a change was made, I think it was Rashford. Rashford came off, and they brought in Garnacho, and Brighton again were able to get behind, or Man United would again be able to get behind, basically the same kind of side between uh, Amad Diallo and I believe it or be behind uh, Lewis Dunk, and I think it was Herselwood, uh, and basically a square ball by Diallo was able to it looks like he's trying to go for Xerxes, and Xerxes gets really unlucky here because he basically slides forward and misses it, and then Diallo basically is completely open, back post and or Ganacho, and he gets the contact right. It's gonna go in either way, and it unfortunately it hits Xerxes offsides right before it can go in. So, uh, Man United actually really did feel like they took control in the second half. Den Hag did make a change from the first half to the second half. First, he started with Mason Mount with Bruno and tried to do that kind of 4-2-2-2, a little bit of a shape, or maybe in a 4-2-4, whatever you want to call it. It wasn't really working, and Mason Mount really didn't have any kind of touches at all, and he changed it for Xerxes, and I just felt it did feel like Man United were a little bit more kind of a a little more threatening, at least with Xerxes, but really they were also threatening because they were able to get in behind Brighton a little bit more. But after that, then Ten Hag made a bunch more changes, and it was after he started kind of tweaking things a little bit. He brought on McTominay. He brought on. He took off Maguire to bring on Delict. He did a couple of other things as well. And on the flip side, Brighton also made a bunch of changes as well. And after each side made a lot of changes, Brighton really did almost basically dominate that final 12 minutes. So you felt eventually, if there was going to be a game winner, it probably would come from Brighton. And lo and behold, it does. It's a Dinger that's able to draw basically four players onto him. No one gets tight enough. And he basically, it's off a recycled corner kick. And he basically sees Yao Pedro and it's like three other Brighton players as well, completely unmarked. Back post. All a Dinger has to do is get this up in the air, float it, and make sure it misses a lot of the Man United players that were basically all over Adingra. So it's possible if he doesn't get the flick right, and United maybe are in a good position to stop it, but he's not. And Onana has absolutely no shot, really. Yao Pedro and again, it was really two other players behind him. It was take your pick, and Pedro was able to find the corner, and so there you go. De Zerbi gets another big win. Not De Zerbi. Fabian Hortzer gets another big win to start his journey, and we just saw what he did versus Arsenal as well, and so unbeaten to start his career in the EPL, youngest coach in the league as well. And then we get to Man City. Man City trailed Ipswich in one of what was going to be maybe the more kind of surprising results, and that didn't really last long. Edison with another howler because he didn't really play that well versus Chelsea, but it didn't last long. Holland basically is able to get a hat trick. Kevin De Bruyne with another either goal and assist. City looks strong again, really, and the other thing too is Ilkay Gundogan is back for them. And there's still no Phil Foden to add to this, no Rodri as well. And we saw what City did versus West Ham as well, with Holland getting another hat trick. City, unfortunately, do look strong again. And then we move on to Chelsea. Chelsea were a little bit different than their first game with Man City. So they get the first win with Enzo Maresca. They get the error going, and maybe they scored all the goals that they wanted for the era, coming at Gary O'Neill's expense, Wolves' expense. I believe it was 6-2. Though this was a bonkers game because Wolves really weren't outplayed that much. It's just very strange how after it went to 2-1 in the second half. I think it was Ait Nori, whoever was marking on that side, just was not able to handle Cole Palmer basically making a run or being able to get on the ball and be able to find a Madueke basically kind of top of the box on the side, and just Madueke was just going to town doing the same kind of move every single time, and basically gets a hat trick on it. But one thing to say about Madueke that I really liked that I don't always see from wingers, especially young wingers, is he was taken on at even before he started scoring. He was taken on at Nori early on in the first half, and he was showing him he can go down the right and get to the byline and get a very dangerous cross off, or he can actually cut towards goal and get it on his left foot, and he can go for goal. So he looks two-footed, or he looked comfortable basically going both directions, and he scores, I think, using both feet. So Madueke hat trick, really nice moment for him for that youngster. It was very interesting as well because there was a point there where it didn't seem like maybe he was even going to be in Enzo Maresca's cards. And they lose Raheem Sterling, and they bring in Jadon Sancho, and the person to really benefit out of all that chaos was they also brought in Pedro Neto as well, the last day of the summer, and the two players to really benefit is Madueke, and Cole Palmer was finally played a little bit more through centrally. Which I think really helped him as well, because basically Cole Palmer started on the right versus Man City, and it just didn't feel like that really did fit. Cole Palmer, having a little bit more kind of a free role, it looked a little bit more of a complete Chelsea side, you can say. And you always have Jackson who was also getting on the score sheet here. There's a lot of criticism to Jackson, but there's also Compared to Darwin Núñez in the past, there's a lot of that similarity. Simply because he's a physical beast, and he's always going to make runs that makes defenders kind of think a little bit in the box. And as long as you can do that, and as long as you can keep center back attentions elsewhere, it's going to allow your players outside the box to be able to create as well. And Chelsea do have that in built loads, and so. Uh, but that said, it hasn't all been that merry, uh, as we saw versus their next game versus Crystal Palace, and then we get to Newcastle and Bournemouth, 2-1. Gordon with an early kind of goal. Lots of controversy though. Django Tawatatara it might have actually ended tied. Watatara thought he maybe earned the equalizer, but basically after a late corner kick, VAR kind of interfered, suggested maybe his arm or shoulder kind of catapulted the ball into the net. So it was Gordon, and I believe uh, it might have been Kluivert who got the first, or it might have been Semenyo who got the first goal. But this game was very very interesting because Bournemouth were maybe unlucky. Joe Linton wasn't sent off for a very very outrageous clothesline of the keeper. Uh, but also Newcastle were all over the place trying to play from the back, and basically their defensive line is a problem already to start. It was a bit surprising they didn't get Mark Gahey or someone similar across the line. You look at what Crystal Palace have brought in this window. You look at what West Ham have brought in this window with Kilman, with Tadebo. Crystal Palace apparently did bring in. Uh, I believe it's uh, Trevor Chalobah, formerly of Chelsea, but they also brought in Maxence Lacroix. And Newcastle did bring in Lloyd Kelly, and we'll see how they try to play him. But they didn't really bring in anyone else at center back, and so they're playing Dan Burn, and they've got to play a couple of games without Fabian Schär because of that early red card. And the back line is slow, and it's been a problem. It really has. And even when Fabian Schär returns, he's quite good on the ball, but he doesn't really have a whole lot of pace to him either. It's been a little unnerving for Newcastle to start, though they were able to get a good result for Spurs after that. And so to kind of close off, we have Crystal Palace and West Ham. A West Ham win at 2-0. Bowen and Souček get the goals, both on counters. I thought Palace played well enough to actually get it. They had enough chances to win themselves. Similar to that game versus Brentford, a lot of chances came to Eze and Edouard. They weren't able to put them away, but we did see Eze get a pretty nice finish for Chelsea. And then Fulham and Leicester. Fulham win 2-1. Emil Smith Rowe with one of the with I guess a debut goal for Fulham, and I think the second one came from a corner kick. And then Nottingham Forest and Southampton. Nottingham Forest win 1-0. Southampton were really all over the place. This could have been a beatdown. And it's Southampton had a lot of the ball, but I think they averaged something like 110 passes for one shot that they took. So they only had 5 shots in total. So a lot of possession dominance, but they weren't really creating anything at all with it. And Nottingham Forest had something like 23 shots, and they made the keeper work. On the flip side, and so Southampton were probably lucky it was only 1-0, and so that is where we are for for week 2, and getting to week 3. I'm not going to spend the most detail, I guess, looking over as I look at this. I can spend the most detail looking over each game, but I will relatively be detailed with Liverpool and Man United. So the goals and events we have Alexander Arnold feel like he should have gotten the first goal because he had a really nice Steven Gerrard moment, but it's ruled out. But then Luis Diaz gets 2. And again, he does look a completely new player on his slot. But I think I have a different theory onto that I'll expand on. Basically, it is. I don't really know if there actually is science to it, but when you have an injury that keeps you out for a year, I've developed a little bit of a theory that regardless if you can play or not, you don't get back to where you were pre-injury until as much time as you were out for a year that passes as well. So really, it can take basically 2 years to fully recover yourself. Luis Diaz he has his pace again. He has his burst again. I think he has confidence in his knee again. and we're really seeing the benefits of that as well. And then Salah makes it 3-0, and then after that, it could have been a whole lot more. A couple really poor finishes by Liverpool, but also Man United could have gotten a couple of goals late as well. Allison had to work a little bit, but this wasn't about Man United and Liverpool being competitive because they were not competitive, and that kind of gets to the point of Man United again, and Liverpool with under on a slot, and this is the place where Liverpool's basically title hopes and dreams last season of a quad all came down to end, and the way that the finishing went, it felt like it was possibly going to be that again, and then they were able to get a couple of the finishes to go their way, but again, Man United were just fully out of all over the place, and Casemiro and Mano both responsible for the goals because a lot of giveaways, but it wasn't just that. Their shape was just really really bad. You don't really remember Garnacho or Rashford really helping out without the ball. And the back line with Mesare, Delict, Martinez, and Dallo, it might be better in possession, but out of it, it's still Delict looked like Harry Maguire in that second. Anytime that they had to defend a lot of spaces, he was struggling. Now he was quite good at stopping Liverpool in the first half. I can't say that. And Martinez as well. I don't really want to go at him because he does make Man United better. I don't really know where you play him though. I feel like you can maybe try to do something interesting with maybe you try him at left back and try to invert him a little bit, try to get him a little bit more into midfield where I feel like he could benefit a little bit more. But just in the box, he was getting bullied, and he didn't necessarily do well on any of the goals either. Wasn't really Bruno Fernandes's best day, and it wasn't. I thought Xerxes was kind of struggling a little bit to get involved for them as well. The note I had for Xerxes was there'd be a couple of times when Bruno would get on the ball, or it would be Dallo. Someone would have maybe a run to actually get Liverpool in some trouble, and Xerxes would be completely behind the play. Now, some of that would be just kind of the way that Ten Hag maybe asked him to run and work without the ball. Maybe he was trying to close someone down, and there was a turnover. But those things end up mattering. And really, the reason why Man United were better in the second half is Xerxes was able to be into the box when a couple of those crosses came in, he did force Allison into a couple of saves. So I don't really want to spend an hour necessarily going over this, but I guess talk a little bit more in depth about at least in that first half. So Man United started okay in the opening 4 minutes. Liverpool couldn't get a touch, and then they get Rashford the ball early, and he's able to get a corner kick. A few minutes later, Bruno had the ball in a dangerous area. Possibly could have gone for goal himself. Tried to square it to Xerxes instead, and he wasn't really ready for it. But the first time that Liverpool were able to just get a little touches onto the ball, put a couple passes together, and they play through Man United with ease, and that was kind of the theme really into the game. And so in the beginning, you just see them passing it, forward and backwards, trying to move Man United's entire team from one side of the field to the other. And then when Liverpool try to go upfield on the other side, Man United haven't really been able to adjust back in time. And as the saying goes, the ball does move faster than any player can run on the field. It also helps when you have players that don't really run to get back into position. And when I think about Man United these days, at least the last year or so, it's a team that doesn't run a whole lot. And I feel like the metrics uh, agree with that as well. But just the way Liverpool were able to just get them to go on one side, and they weren't able to get back into the shape was quite bad. And then Liverpool used basically their secret weapon that Man United were not able to handle, and it was Dominic Soboslai, who was finding ways to find any kind of spaces where he was either getting behind Casemiro, where Casemiro couldn't really get to him, where someone like a Delict or Martinez couldn't really get to him either because he was playing too far back. So there was space there, but he was also finding ways to create an overload a little bit on the wing because of the way that Luis Diaz was running. There was a situation really early on where Luis Diaz was making a run, and someone like Mazurai had to go mark both Luis Diaz, but he also had to help out with Delict because he was worried about Diaz being able to get in behind Delict. And anytime that was happening, uh, because you didn't have either Garnacho, coming back or someone else, Dominic Soboslai was able to basically take that spot on the sideline, get the ball completely unmarked, and then Liverpool were able to just really really go up there. And so uh, that was that was kind of just kind of the story a little bit in the first half. But the other story was, basically they picked out they basically picked on Casemiro, both out of possession, but also when Casemiro had the ball. And so we get to an early chance here. Van Dijk basically steps in front of a weak Bruno pass, gets the ball to Jota in the box. Jota drags the shot wide, so nothing really comes from in here. But the thing to kind of touch on is Van Dijk is able to gamble, playing really high up, because he's also next to Robertson. He's right next to Kanate, and Alexis is also in the area as well. So Liverpool's, I guess, rest defense, as you say, is a little bit different. We're seeing, Arne Slot play Robertson a little bit different. We're also seeing him play Trent a little bit differently. But the thing is Van Dijk can gamble. Van Dijk is able to play this high up, and he's able to gamble on a loose ball in a way that Man United's back line's not able to. And that was also a little bit of a theme in this game as well. And basically, it seems like Liverpool we're going to get an early goal with Alexander-Arnold, and it comes from basically Van Dijk having a pass that takes 6 Man United players out of the play. Gravenberch is able to collect it on the turn, basically fools Kobe Mano with a nice little, clever little shift. Then he finds Luis Diaz, and then Diaz gets to the byline, cut back cross into the box. Salah gets a late touch on it before it reaches Alexander-Arnold, and then Alexander-Arnold gets the final finish, but it's not it. And then he has the nice little tribute to Gerrard. But it's ruled out because basically it does touch Salah offsides. But the reason I kind of touch on this is basically the way that Gravenberch was able to position his body and receive the ball in this tight area, and then also ball carried a little bit and basically get behind 3 or 4 players just with one little touch. Gravenberch was immense in this game, hitting. He started it off the season being absolutely immense, and got the better of Kobe Mano here. Got the better of Kobe Mano the entire game. But it wasn't really a story about clever build-up play. It was because Liverpool didn't have as many passes as you would have expected. It really was about which side could handle being pressed, and it happened even before the Casemiro goals. Man United started being really sloppy after about the 22nd minute mark, and if not for some big defensive stops by De Ligt, it probably would have been really ugly even beforehand. So there are a couple of opportunities where it looked like Liverpool maybe possibly even in trouble themselves. But Kanate was able to be there to stop Rashford on some loose balls. Both teams were actually quite sloppy a little bit. But after again the 20th minute or so, there was a change that happened, and I don't really know if it was necessarily a directive, but we basically saw Alexander Arnold moving further more into midfield. He wasn't playing centrally, but he was almost on the wing, but he wasn't. He was another midfielder essentially. It almost gave Liverpool what I have is a 3-3, 1. Szoboszlai having the free roll, and then a 3 look. And the reason why I talk about that is this frustrated Man United immensely. It felt like Man United's midfield at any point in time was overrun, uh, and they never had. They're outnumbered anytime that the ball was going into midfield. And the other thing about that this did is Liverpool had much more bodies where the ball was mostly being played in. So anytime there was a loose ball, anytime that there was a duel to be won, Liverpool seemed to have more people around the ball than Man United did. And we actually see that for that leads to where the goals end up coming for Man United, and so the way that Man United set up also played a role into this. So it felt like Ten Hag tried to copy what has maybe worked in the past, versus Man City recently. He lined up in his 4-2-4 shape, but it was very narrow. Rashford and Garnacho were playing kind of close to the two attackers. They weren't really providing, they weren't staying on the wings, and they were being narrow. So that meant the width was open for Liverpool. And the reason why you do that is you deny central progression. But unlike with Man City, or at least you can say this now, or you could say this then. Man City's probably fixed this a little bit with Savinho and Doku. But City in the last couple of times that they play Man United, they have struggled to move the ball on the wings. Now, trying this for Liverpool is not really the best idea because they're quite comfortable at attacking on the wings. Both, Luis Diaz can get the ball on the wing. Salah can get the ball. He's comfortable getting that. Once you get it, you can get it and then turn, and then you can move centrally. Liverpool are quite fun. They were using Szoboszlai to be an option to get on the wing as well, and Liverpool had no issues, being able to do that. And once you're able to do that, then after Man United should have over, then you can get the ball in the middle anyways. And so it was a little bit of a Man United maybe trying to be a little bit too clever for their own good than they should have been. Um, and basically, but nothing really was happening. It was kind of it was stalemating a little bit until really the 20-ish second minute or so, like I said. And then we have a couple chances here. There's Jota very nearly. So really good example, the highlight here where Liverpool are basically baiting Xerxes and Bruno to run at Van Dijk on the ball. And then he launches it to the left side of the field to find Jota, who was wide open again. Garnacho has to mark Robinson, and who's standing basically, side by side to Van Dijk. So you'd be able to just, kick the ball where Garnacho can't really do anything to help out. And that leaves Mazurai, and Mazurai has left to stay with De Ligt because of what Luis Diaz has done. And the way that Liverpool were playing Jota almost had a free roll as well. It was almost a false nine. He wasn't necessarily trying to get in behind De Ligt or getting behind uh, Lisandro Martinez necessarily. He was looking for the free spaces as well. And it really worked out here. Like I mentioned, Szoboszlai was going out to receive the ball in the wing. Here, Jota did as well. And after he does that, he receives the ball, and then it's a nice little give and go, gives it to Szoboszlai, then a nice little touch there, and a better touch by Jota. He might have even been able to dribble all the way into the box and have a shot, and he nearly found Luis Diaz as well into the box. So really good. It's only defended at the last minute by De Ligt. He's able to cut that out, but uh, Man United then get the ball, and they have, I think it's really good skill by Kobe Mainoo to keep it. It looked like they maybe had a decent counter attack opportunity. Bruno had the ball. He had Xerxes making a run, but opted instead for Rashford. Gravenberch is able to cut it out. So both teams are at least, the game's starting to get a little more stretched. And then we finally get to the goal, and it happens in the 31st minute with Diaz. And so again, Liverpool here have tried to press Man United into a trap. United actually do a pretty good job to get out of it. Uh, and maybe even have Liverpool in trouble. To be honest, they have Rashford and Garnacho both open for the long ball. Bruno gets it, but can't play the pass he wants to because basically Anthony Taylor is blocking him. So little assist to the ref here. So Bruno has to pass back to Casemiro, and that's when the problem happens. Casemiro just tries to hit this first time. I think he's trying to find Dallo. It's a weird pass to be honest because the first time ball to Rashford maybe would have been on. And all you would have had to do is just play it into space. Or you could have just not hit this first time. You could have just touched it. But basically, he hits it first time, and Gravenberch reads it. He immediately sees. Maybe he just follows the eyes. I don't know. Uh, but Gravenberch is able to run and intercept it, and then from there, Man United basically have a 5v3 situation. They have to defend, and it's all about at that point when you have that kind of number advantage. It's all about making the right decision at the right time. It didn't even feel like Liverpool did. But Gravenberch does play it to Salah, and then Salah, with his right foot, lo and behold, is able to float the ball back post. And when it happened in real life, I thought it was still going to be a miss because Szoboszlai and Luis Diaz are both right there, both trying to go for this. And Szoboszlai does a very good job to just duck and get out of the way, and not they either basically block Diaz's head or actually hit it with his hand. So it could have been uh, a kind of a Three Stooges kind of moment, but it wasn't. It was an amazing ball played by Salah. But another thing too is Jota makes a little run that drags De Ligt to go basically back post, and that takes De Ligt completely out of the play as well. So really nice run by Jota. Otherwise, De Ligt maybe could have been there to head this away. So that's what happens when you're outnumbered. You just don't know. Where who eventually is going to get the ball, who's wide open. You have all those options to defend. So it's fitting that Luis Diaz is able to get the final end product. But it was also fitting a little bit that Szoboszlai was able to get out of the way. So Casemiro with a key giveaway for the first goal, and we basically see that again. And Man United do get a chance to equalize if they get a Mazurai shot. The only reason to really touch on this is I thought one of the few times that Liverpool really did kind of struggle a little bit was when Dallo found himself a little bit more into midfield, and it's a very nice ball over the top, long ball by Dallo that actually is able to get in behind Rob. It's one of the few times that Robinson was able to actually was struggling a little bit with Garnacho, and then Garnacho first time ball finds Maz, or maybe it kind of deflects, or maybe it's Bruno Fernandes. Someone's able to get in behind Robinson on a run that he's not really expecting, and I think the cross by Bruno finds Mazurai and he hits it first time. It goes through Van Dijk, and this could have gone anywhere. Could have deflected off Van Dijk. For Alisson, is able to guess, and he's able to guess right and make the save. And then we get to the second goal that makes it 2-0. And it starts. What I want to touch on is what happens, a few seconds earlier, because Grafenberch brilliantly uses his body to basically dispossess Garnacho, wins the ball back high in the United end. Liverpool then press or pass it back, only to go forwards. And Garnacho or Grafenberch is trying to basically do a clever turn again on the ball. But this time it is dispossessed by Maserai. Then plays the ball to Casemiro, who's blanketed by 5 Liverpool players surrounding him. And I think what happens next is it's Casemiro's fault, but I don't think he was played in the best position because he's looking for his surroundings and he sees all these players around him and he's trying to maybe just collect his thoughts a little bit. And basically, what happens is Luis Diaz catches him from behind, licks the ball off him, then plays it to Salah, who again is able to get the ball in the dangerous area. Salah lures Dallo onto him, and then before firing and outside the boot, a little bit of a pass with his this time with his left foot, and Diaz finds Diaz in the box, and he's able to smash it first time. But it's a brilliant first time finish. It really is, and it's a really nice pass by Salah. But it's also fairly easy for Man United to defend this. So uh, Martinez, I'm going to touch on him. Being a center back, you need to have a little bit better defending, a little instincts, a little bit into the box because in the beginning it feels like he's neck and neck with Luis Diaz, and Diaz isn't really open, and Diaz is able to just kind of nudge a little bit away, and he's able to create a little space. Martinez doesn't follow it, and basically he watches Salah. He doesn't know where Salah's going to go, and Salah's able to find him, and Diaz is completely wide open at that point. And at that point, it's all about getting the right power to beat Onana, and he's able to find the corner versus Onana. And the reason why I touched on that is Liverpool nearly scored a very similar goal like this versus Brentford. Only Flecken made an amazing save into the corner. And this place, Onana wasn't able to make the save that Flecken did. I don't necessarily want to blame this on Onana. That feels a little harsh, but just wanted to highlight that a little bit. But I do think it was, Casemiro lost the ball, but Man United still had a way to stop this. Uh, Mazraoui playing Casemiro the ball it was a hospital ball, really. He should have not really done that. But at that point, Man United were losing the ball a lot. They kind of lost grip of the games. Maybe they're trying to just kind of, keep possession a little bit. But it catches them. And so we get to halftime. It's 2-0. Liverpool finally had, taken their chances, but it wasn't like the onslaught that we were maybe expecting, to be honest. But that said, Liverpool did take control of basically after the 20-minute marks. Szoboszlai, McAllister, and Gravenberch were just toying with Man United's midfield. Trent Alexander-Arnold was basically finding ways to get an extra man as well. The way that Diego Jota was dropping in, you can overload the midfield and you can crowd it by playing Jota kind of that way. The way that they were using Szoboszlai as well, but you always had the overhead option with Salah and Diaz, and that's why it's different. And because of that, Man United were not able to get the numbers that they wanted to crash the midfield that they would have wanted because they don't have the defenders that can play in a high line. And that really is a problem because they brought in Matthias de Ligt, and he does he does have a little Harry Maguire in his game a little bit. But the other thing too is they did bring in someone like Lenny Euro, this 18-year-old, and it's just really unlucky for them that he basically got hurt after one of the preseason games, and they might be able to get him around October or so. When they do, as long as he hasn't had any kind of setbacks, he's really going to help them immensely because though Santa Martinez can play in a high line, but he needs a partner to play with him. Delict can't do that. Harry Maguire can't do that, and Lindelof, whoever Johnny Evans, whoever else they have at center back can't do that either. And because he can't do that, any team that they play can kind of position themselves this way where Man United are going to struggle, and because of that, you're gonna have to rely then on counters, getting stuff off the counter. So that wasn't great, at least in that respect. But also, it wasn't just about Man United; it was also about Liverpool, and we have started to see start playing differently. So far in a couple of these games, and so especially the way he's using fullbacks. I mean, Andy Robinson was staying back and forming a back three. Trent had the free role to play in midfield or to be on the wing to help out with Salah, and he was defending on the wing as well. Uh, but just the way, and he was staying wide, but, like, the thing that was interesting is the way that he was playing Andy Robinson, and that was kind of the way that was kind of coming into the season. We didn't know how that was going to work. But that said, that's not that much different than what Klopp was doing last season. And that'll be something I get to kind of later on is, maybe one of the reasons why this hasn't been that big of a change is at least, in the beginning of last season, we did see a little bit more of this kind of back three where Trent was a little bit more inverted, a little bit more in midfield as well. So we saw a little bit of this last season. Uh, but the reason why to get to highlight a little bit why, uh, the both fullbacks, because it was also what Alexander Arnold was doing, is Man United is set up to basically block the center and do it as much as possible. Liverpool was still able to keep the pitch stretched as wide as possible, using Alexander Arnold, using Salah, interchanging, and using Luis Diaz or Szoboszlai or Jota on the other side. And Man United were all over the place. And Casemiro, I mean, there's a reason why they spent big to bring Emmanuel Ugarte in, and that is kind of we'll see how that changes. Because basically it feels like that's going to be his task. His task is going to be to eat up a lot of ground and to try to at least make it a little bit harder to get in behind the midfield and to basically allow that allows teams to go at a backline that's always in retreat mode. Manuel Ugarte is very good at doing that, and I even said before they were linked to him or before they made it official that I felt of all the teams that were linked to him, he would make sense there, because he to me, he's almost what Casemiro was from Real Madrid. He's not really the best on the ball, and so but you can hide people like that. They have a lot of players that actually have gotten better on the ball. Mazurai and Dallo specifically look so much improved than what they had last year with Wan-Bissaka. Uh, and Manuel, Mateus de Ligt is as well. So Man United can do a little bit better as far as build a play, and maybe you can hide the one player like Manuel Ugarte and just ask him to the way that Real Madrid was doing with Casemiro, with Modric and Cruz, and then as go further upfield, that's then your number six, then your Ugarte, takes up that central space, and basically his role will be don't allow teams to run behind you. Make those tackles, be physical there to help out someone like a Kobe Mano or to help out Casemiro. We'll see how that it happens, but yeah, Casemiro was struggling. I thought he's struggling versus Brighton as well. His legs, he played for well at least that first half versus Fulham, but I thought even for Fulham had a decent had a decent run in that second half where Fulham could have gotten Man United just to start the season. So not the best start for Eric Ten Hag, and so not the best start for Casemiro as well. And it's the also you're forcing, because Casemiro can't really do what he wants to do. You're putting a lot of pressure and uh, a lot on the back of Kobe Mano, and, as young as he is, and it just didn't feel like that's necessarily the best way to use him either. And speaking of then another player that to kind of touch on was Bruno. And Bruno just doesn't feel like he's adjusted his game. It was interesting to watch the way that Liverpool were using Szoboszlai, because both were having a free number 10 role. The way that Szoboszlai was making different runs to looking for the ball was different than what Bruno has done. The way that Arsenal use Martin Odegaard, or the way that Spurs use Madison, it doesn't feel like Man United have ever tried to play Bruno in that kind of way. It's almost like Bruno's kind of a second striker. He's always looking to get forward with the ball. Uh, and it was very interesting to see sometimes, at least in this game, Bruno and Xerxes weren't really on the same page. Both were really dropping in, or both were kind of staying looking for the ball, and it was very discombobulated. It really was. And so Ten Hag had to make a change, and he does. Takes Casemiro off, brings on Toby Collier on, someone with a little bit more legs. But the flip side of that is because he has legs, he had more room to he had the legs to roam as well. And in the second half, you see Liverpool were enjoying that as well. They were basically making him chase the ball a little bit. So again, Kobe Mano had to play midfield by himself, and there was an early chance for Man United. It came from Liverpool maybe being a little bit too cute. Allison just boots it upfield, so not the best giveaway. And then Dallo, position in midfield. He's able to receive it, and plays it to Rashford, and then Rashford finds Kobe Mano wide open with a with a forward ball, and then Kobe Mano has a nice ball to Collier into the box, who heads it back to Xerxes, and Xerxes into the box had a pretty good, decent effort. He actually forced Allison to make that save. And then there was a chance for Liverpool nearly to celebrate. Alexander Arnold kissing the camera again. Only it was stopped by Delict. But it didn't take long to get that third with Salah, and he loves the goal at Old Trafford. But scored two, or set up two, and then scored the third, and then so here just McAllister just bullies Mano off the ball. He receives it from Mesrai, but again, Kobe Mano is entirely by himself when he receives the ball. It's stark. It really is, because when Kobe Mano gets the ball, there's not a Man United player anywhere near him for within, I want to say, 20 yards, maybe even more than that. It is striking. And so Kobe Mano is all by himself, and then it's not just McAllister. There are a couple of Liverpool players near him, and if McAllister misses here, but he's able to shoulder him or bully him a little bit off the ball, and Lexus wins back, passes it to Szoboszlai. Szoboszlai carries it into the penalty area. Again, Man United's defenders are very reactive. They're always on the back foot. They're not able to ever uh, be the aggressor. They're always in retreat mode. And then it's all about just finding, making the right decisions when you have that kind of advantage. And Szoboszlai squares it to Salah, and Salah just takes it first time, and Onana is all over the place off his line. It's not even the best strike, but Onana is just completely out of position, where he's able to find it with ease. So not the best positioning by Onana, but again, I don't really know how much I can blame the keeper, because it really was Kobe Mano that messed up, but also the back line. The back line was just in retreat mode. But then after that, things got weird, because minutes right after that, maybe even seconds, Man United give the ball away again. I think it's Lisandro Martinez just passes it right to Salah, and Salah has a little dribble, and probably should have scored, to be honest. And then uh, there was a moment in the second half where Connor Bradley was able to square it to Szoboszlai, and Szoboszlai tried to take a touch instead of trying to go for goal himself. And then there was a moment in the second half where Liverpool are doing a summer training drill called rondos, just doing a bunch of triangles with each other, and they've got Man United players just running everywhere for the ball, looking headless. And Salah also created a chance out of that. Just the second half, Man United lost complete control of the game, and they finished 3-0. Allison did have to make a couple saves because of Xerxes being able to get a couple chances in the second half, but this wasn't good. And the 3-0 is respectable, and the only thing I can say for Man United fans is it maybe saved Ten Hag's job that it wasn't more, because it could have been more. Shots 8 on for Man United, 3 on target. Liverpool with 11 and only 4. So the shots, it feels like, could have been higher. 6 big chances though for Liverpool. The XG, I think Man United maybe even tied with XG, or it's 1.6 to 1.7. I don't really agree with that. I feel like it could have been a little bit higher. Uh, but Man United with more possession, and 421 passes, and Liverpool outpassed Liverpool with 391. So that was a little bit of a surprise, considering Liverpool are trying to be a little bit more patient in the build-up, but it was really easy for them to also get in behind. So, but also the interesting thing here is it was 3-0, and then Slot made a lot of changes. He brought off Alexander Arnold. He brought on Connor Bradley. He brought on he changed Gakpo for Luis Diaz. He made a bunch of changes right around like the 70th minute mark, and basically Liverpool went into shutdown mode. So all of this happened with 20 or 25 minutes left to go into the game. So it could have been. I do feel like it could have been more if they would have wanted it, but at that point, what's the point? You don't need to risk anything, you risk injury. I think even before this, Mateus Delict did go hard into Luis Diaz, going to ground, and Liverpool got lucky that wasn't worse. So stuff to talk about there. I mean, getting started with Man United, I do think the main thing I want to talk about is there were basically two narratives at play here. So after the Brighton game, and there was one that basically dominated over the other, and so the first one was Man United were unlucky. Xerxes denied Garnacho's goal. Could have been 2-1. Maybe United even win that game. But the other narrative is, well, after Brighton made their changes and Ten Hag made his changes, Man United's shape and defense completely disappeared in that final 15 minutes, and they got worse. Also, you had people like James Milner winning 50-50 sprints to loose balls to get in behind Kobe Mano and Casemiro, or even were beating Harry Maguire. So the signs were there in that game that this is still a very big issue. And in this game, you didn't have the Maguire problem, but you did have De Ligt out there who again was struggling a little bit. Uh, and at least from what we saw last season, it wasn't much different here. It was very easy to get their midfield completely out of shape. And once that happened, you get a back line in retreat mode. You can't play a high back line, and it was a lot of desperate defending. And a couple of years last season, in a lot of these games versus Liverpool, had loads of chances, and they just missed. Here, it wasn't that case because it feels like this could have been another 7-0 kind of scoring line, or at least 7-2 if you want to give Man United some goals. So already talked about what they did with the shape. A couple positives I can say. Uh, I mean, Manuel Ugarte can't really return or get in this side soon enough to help out with their dual winning, to help out being able to just have someone that can run in this midfield, because it doesn't feel like Kobe Mano is really that good at running too. Kobe Mano is very good on the ball, but he's not really the best passer, and I just feel like he's also 19. I don't necessarily want to go at him, and that's kind of the thing. It's hard to remember how young he is because he's been featured a whole lot for these last season and a half now, and you forget he's still young. But it's also that's not really the best squad management by Man United, or even Ten Hag. Uh, because he is going to make mistakes, and he did make one here. So at least Ugarte is someone that can run. That will help them. Diallo off the bench, Garnacho in moments. So they're getting good, decent, play on the wings. The only one that's not really helping them is Rashford, and we'll get to that as well. De Ligt did defend okay in the first half. When he had to defend first, and wasn't asked to cover a lot of ground, he was okay. Just again, it gets back to the Harry Maguire kind of moment, and then Dallo. Uh, I don't really know what to do with Dallo either, because he was probably the best player last season, and he was played at right back. But you brought in this Mazraoui player from Bayern. And Mazraoui has played quite well for them early on as well. Uh, so they're trying Dallo at left back. It's better than what they had last season. No Luke Shaw still. Uh, doesn't feel like Dallo is going to do what Rashford basically needs. Rashford doesn't seem to like taking players on right now. He wasn't able to beat Trent 1v1. He wasn't able to take on Kanate 1v1 either. He was shying on that too. Two of the chances that Man United created in this game did come from Rashford in the second half. So I can't say that. He had a couple really nice crosses. I think Rashford needs someone to overlap him with, that forces a defender to make that run. I don't really feel like Dallo is necessarily going to do that. Shaw would, if Shaw was able to play. So I feel like when Shaw gets back in the side, maybe that's when you can see Rashford get going again a little bit. Otherwise, maybe you can play Rashford, as your striker. Which a couple of these games now, Man United have not. They've tried Mason Mount. They haven't really played with a striker. I don't really know what Joshua Zirkzee is. He's 6'4", but he doesn't really play like a big man. He's trying to look for the ball at his feet. As he's reminded me a little bit of Cody Gakpo. Last season for Liverpool. I feel like get that guy into the box, make him a little bit more aggressive, because you see what he can do when the ball is played to him into the box. Because he could have scored a couple of goals if not for a couple of big Allison saves. So you can maybe say Xerxes can be a positive, uh, but that really is it. I mean, Casemiro gave the ball 13 times, and he only played one half, and two turnovers did lead to the goals. Bruno again, I don't really necessarily want to go with him. I would can't say Ten Hag's decisions were a little bit surprising. Took De Ligt off for Maguire. Maybe there were fitness issues at play. Taking off Garnacho for Ahmed Diallo. That could be another thing too. When Diallo came on, it looked like he offered a lot more than what we had seen. But I was surprised we didn't see Rashford taken off. Maybe he played Garnacho on the left. Uh, but that really is kind of all you can say. I mean, no Yore as well has really hurt their transition defense. So at least nothing else. Manuel Ugarte will help out with their transition defense. Uh, but it's not great. The team doesn't run. for some reason. I don't know if that's an Eric Ten Hag thing or not. It feels like that's been a thing for a couple of years now. Just it's one thing to set up weird. It's another thing to maybe you're not making the best sub decisions. But if a team is going to get outworked week to week, it doesn't really matter who you're playing against. It's going to be hard to overcome that, to be honest. And the last thing I'll add, something like $600 million have been spent over the last 5 years or so. Uh, and the club is still reliant on kids. It's reliant on Kobe Mano now. Garnacho, it's reliant on Diallo. And they just brought in Lenny Yoro, not necessarily from their academy, but he's 18 years old. It's one thing to be stacked for depth, but these basically you're forced to play and start these kids every week now. So I think it's maybe hurting Kirby Mano's progression a little bit. So the planning by the suites, I think, is the main thing. It's easy to blame Eric Ten Hag, and there was all this talk after the Man United game. Oh, he's got to get out. He's got to be gone. And they have finally changed over a little bit with the new ownership in Ratcliffe. But the people that were in charge beforehand, they should own a lot of this, not necessarily just Ten Hag. And injuries have also played a role in here. They're without Rasmus Højlund. When he comes in, are you going to find a way to play Xerxes and Rasmus together? Does Rasmus immediately go in and be your number 9? He's not necessarily going to be nearly as involved looking for the ball, but he's always going to be someone to give center backs some you know to basically give some center backs to think about a little bit more. That could be a storyline as well. Without Lenny Yora as well, without Luke Shaw, so this can get better. I can say that for Man United fans. So can they be patient? I don't really know what patient is, and I don't really know what better is. Better is it more competitive? I don't necessarily know where they're going to finish in the league. I don't feel it. It's hard for me to say that this is a Champions League team at the minute, but we'll see. We'll see what happens with adding someone like Manuel Ugarte to the side as well. And so with Liverpool, one thing that I can say that I haven't been able to talk about since I last did a little mini podcast is they made a signing since I last spoke in Federico Chiesa, and finally someone to share some solid minutes. I was crying for a center back, someone left-footed center back, or a left back because of what I don't really feel like it's Robertson's the best in a back three where he has to defend across into the back post because Man United basically almost nearly scored on that. Uh, and I wanted, maybe someone to, come in and as a midfielder to maybe play as a 6 because Liverpool haven't really had that for a couple of years. So it does feel like maybe the idea is going to be someone like a Gravenberch. Uh, but for the longest time, I've also really worried about Salah. Haven't felt like Liverpool have had necessarily depth, and you're bringing in this player that is coming off a really bad ACL injury, but the ACL injury was almost 2 years ago. And he looked really good for Italy in Euros. Italy wasn't really good, but Chiesa actually did have a pretty good Euros, at least for them, at least in the first game. Struggled a little bit for Spain, but so did everyone. And so you have a two-footed genius. He can play on the left. He can play on the right. I hope the idea really is to play him on the right. And or maybe even play him in the middle. I don't really know. Second striker. He's got a really good. He's always had a really good finish on him. We'll see if he's recovered from his pace or not. But if nothing else, it's someone to at least share Salah's minutes, and you finally have someone that you do like for like on the right side because I haven't really loved the idea that it being Harvey Elliott. I feel like Harvey Elliott's more of a midfielder. And we've just found out that Harvey Elliott has just broken his foot, so he's going to be out for a couple of weeks anyways. But it's just the biggest thing that I've been worried about is Mo Salah and his minutes. They've already spoken about that in the past. It's just overly reliant on him, and they've been really well and lucky to never really have injuries with him. But they overplay him to a point where after February, especially in African Nation Cup of years, uh, African Cup of Nations years, he is always drained after every March or so, and he never is able to really finish strong, and that usually ends up hurting Liverpool, especially in many of these many title races or in Champions League kind of runs. So I'm really hoping the idea is to manage all those minutes a little bit better than we have, and finally you have someone that can do that. So it gives them genuine depth options. I mean, it's you can do Szoboszlai, you can do uh, in the middle, you can do Chiesa, you can do Diaz, you can do Gakpo on the left, you can do Jota on the left if you want. You have Nunez and Jota as basically your striker options. You can play Salah through the middle if you want as well. And this is going to be very very interesting to see how Liverpool plays with a little depth, at least attacking depth. Midfield could be a little bit sticky because you're asking Szoboszlai to do a whole lot of running. Uh, his legs are going to eventually get tired if not have an injury because that's what happened last season. So and then now there's no Harvey Elliott. Could the idea be Curtis Jones? They kept someone like Tyler Morton. Maybe the idea would be kind of him. You need to find a way to also to still rotate the minutes a little bit with Alexis McAllister, with Szoboszlai, possibly with Gravenberch, and they still have Indo as well. But uh, and eventually when Harvey Elliott returns, I feel like he can find a way to play a little bit in the midfield as well. Uh, but that is it's an interesting point because I mean maybe at the back line could be a little bit of issue if something happens to Van Dijk. They don't really have anyone that's left-footed. Kanza or Kanate can try to play there, but neither have a left foot. So they only have really three senior center backs, and if anything does happen in January, it probably if something is going to happen where a dream title chase is on the cards, it would be nice to maybe see them try to bring in a center back, and if nothing else, maybe try for Zubimendi again. I mentioned how Gravenberch has been quite well in this little form. Surprisingly enough, I still think Zubimendi is more of a traditional six. But that said, the midfield three has been superb to start the season. Like I said, so much distance covered by Szoboszlai. It's not like Bruno doesn't really run for Man United, but it just doesn't. He doesn't. I don't feel like he covers the spaces nearly as much as Szoboszlai. It just I do worry a little bit why what happens to his legs, what happens to this system, because it is heavily reliant on that. McAllister has been just a number of clever touches to escape pressure. It goes unnoticed unless you're really watching the game. Also, the duel winning, the ball recovery, it's easy to go unnoticed as well. And they're playing him. They played him in this game a little bit deeper than Gravenberch, and then Gravenberch he's turned into a completely different player in these couple of games. Just he's got crazy long legs with his frame, and he's learned how to poke the ball off players. When he gets it, he's skilled carrying it upfield. All of these players are really skilled when they get the ball as well. They can pass it, they can carry it. Uh, Slot playing with double pivot is a little bit different. And I just feel like that has reignited his career. We're seeing basically the Gravenberch that was spoken about so highly when he was at Ajax before he moved to Bayern. I mean, the attackers. What more can you say about Mo Salah? Uh, 3 goals and assists really could have been more. Luis Diaz as well, a completely different player than we saw last season. Jota's work rate as well can go a little bit unnoticed if you don't really see. And then again, there's Chiesa and Gakpo and Nunez to somehow add to this, and so uh, defenders is kind of the only thing to think about. You have two sides where it maybe is kind of the biggest change between Liverpool and Man United at the moment, or I guess other clubs, is Liverpool having Kanate and Van Dijk because both can play very aggressive near the halfway line. Man United with Delict can't do that, and it just feels like when the ball ever like lands in that kind of area, it feels like Liverpool are going to have the numbers to win the ball back. And anytime that it did feel like someone was able to get in behind Van Dijk or able to get in behind Alexander Arnold, someone like Kanate has the legs to make that recovery and to stop that counter immediately, and then everyone's able to get back. Uh, Liverpool have been significantly less dangerous on the counter, at least so far, than what we saw the last couple of years with Klopp. So credit to and Allison hasn't really had to make nearly as many Herculean saves. I mean, he still had to make a couple of them, but he's not having to make 6, 7, 8 saves a game, and so he's benefited from that. Uh, and what more can you say about Alexander Arnold and Robinson? Uh, it really is amazing that Southgate wasn't able to figure out a way to play this guy. One thing to say about in the Nations League kind of window is the interim England manager Carsley has immediately started playing Alexander Arnold in as a right back, and immediately that is showing dividends. And then again, Robinson playing as a third center back. Uh, it makes you so much better defensively. You rest defense when you're not really having both having that free role to run up. Uh, that said, not really the best defending in the box, and so if there's one area where teams can maybe look to exploit, it could be that. If Liverpool have to defend and you've got a situation where maybe Kanate has to go out wide because Trent's out of position, so you take Kanate out of the picture, you get across that beats Kanate, and then all you have to do is beat Van Dijk because someone's going to be probably be able to beat Robertson in a duel head to head. So uh, the kind of final takes was it's a rotten time for the international break, to be honest. Uh, and again, the just the kind of thing it's to end with is it's not been much different from how Klopp was playing at least last season to the way they've started now. A double pivot. Liverpool were playing what is called almost like a WM last season. It was like a 3-2-2, almost like a box four shape, and then three attackers to still press. Uh, so we've kind of seen just them adding a fourth presser. Playing almost a 4-2-4 shape. So it lined up similar to Man United, at least in the beginning. When you've got a team that can run, you can make you can make any kind of shape that you really want. Another thing too is you've got so many good technical players on the ball. They can find themselves in different kind of positions on the field to give you a numbers advantage, and that's kind of what we've seen so far. Uh, and maybe the one thing to touch on is the way that everyone's been kind of healthy to start the season, and he's gone with Jota being the main striker, not Nunez. Uh, and as we've seen, this the only issue is Jota's not really always the most reliable. So when Nunez does get a chance to play, how is he going to fit in? I kind of feel like he's going to bag loads of goals. He might not be the guy that gets the first one, but if Liverpool have any kind of a lead, it just feels like the way the team's going to eventually have to press them. Uh, this is a team is a very very capable of finding those runs in behind where it's going to be tap in city maybe for Nunez to get a couple really easy ones the way that Man City play with Holland. So I think Nunez is going to bag a boatload. But we'll see if that pans out or not. Uh, Liverpool are not as nearly as vulnerable on the transition, so that's despite not really having a traditional defensive midfielder at place. And one final thing to touch on offensively is, not necessarily saw for well, you did say a little bit versus Man United, but you really saw it versus Brentford. Is they're more patient in their attacking moves. Uh, it feels like they're trying to bait defenses a little bit more. It's less hero ball 1v1. There's a lot of chemistry so far. There's a lot of quick passes. There's a lot of flicks. Uh, there's a lot of just kind of understanding where everyone is, and they're moving the ball quickly. The ball is moving very very quickly. That's another thing too that's been very good to see so far. So early days. I don't really know what to really think. I probably would. I mentioned how I thought Arsenal would probably be the favorites to start the season. It's hard to not say City aren't. But Liverpool feel like are going to at least make this interesting. And without Klopp, so we'll see how it goes. Yeah. And then the other thing to touch on is very similar to what we saw versus Brentford. Similar subs. So we've seen Alexander Arnold off. We've seen Nunez and Gakpo coming on for Diaz and Jota around the kind of the same minute mark. So we don't really know if that's because Liverpool have the lead, and the idea is to maybe play different guys to kind of shift the minutes around or not. But that's kind of where we are, and I'm going to maybe pause it for a second. All right, and to Arsenal and Brighton, the second big game of the weekend. First goal from Havertz. It felt like it was going to be quite, like I said, it's going to feel quite comfortable for Arsenal, and then everything really did change. Declan Rice red card to start the second half, and then Yao Pedro made it 1-1, and then it felt like it could have been anything. Brighton had so many shots in that second half. There was another really great uh, Raya save that kept out. I believe it was Yori out, and then a couple of moments where all that said, there was there was a square ball late for Saka. Saka possibly could have done a little bit better, though. That feels like that was a half chance. But there was another one where Kai Havertz was played in on goal, and he was able to get that first 1v1 to go his way. This one, instead of trying to do something similar, do a bit of a chip, he went low again, where he went low this time, and the keeper was able to save it. And so that is unfortunately where Arsenal are at the minute. You don't really know week to week what kind of Havertz you're going to necessarily get. And the unfortunate part about that is, Man City do have Holland, and you do know what you're going to get with him. So Arsenal off their big win with Aston Villa. You thought you had maybe momentum coming into this. Brighton were also had a little momentum after beating Man United, and this game was a bit of a mess, yeah, to be honest. So I don't necessarily need to spend a ton of time, at least in the first half. The goal came basically from a nothing chance. It's just a ball, long ball kicked in the air. Lewis Dunk allows himself to get bullied by Saka. The ball bounces, and then Saka's able to flick it towards Havertz. And then Havertz does really well to lift it over for Bregan, coming out. Pretty easy finish. Uh, and then right before halftime, there is a little chaos on some loose balls. Party is flying in for a challenge. The ref lets it go. And then goes flying in as well, and he's blown for that. So Rice yellow card on, and the Brighton player that Rice goes on the ground for is Joey Veltman. So again, the halftime thought was it's probably going to be pretty easy for Arsenal again. Also, it was really bad by Lewis Dunk. And then the second half happens, and Rice and Veltman are trying to go for the ball. Ref blows a foul, and then basically Veltman spins the ball. Rice tries to be cheeky, kicks it away. Veltman basically goes full throttle into Rice. So a lot of things happen here. Uh, but it's and then out of nowhere, it's Rice that's sent off. That surprised the commentators, and so again, my take on this is I do think Rice is deserving getting sent off because what he's doing is he's technically delaying the restart, and that is a yellow card offense, and because he's already on a yellow, there you go. Also, the problem for Rice is because there's a second yellow for it being a red. It's not necessarily like VAR could go back and rewind it because that can only be for a straight red. But I do think the complaint from me was Feltman gets away with murder. I don't want to say that, but gets away with a lot here. Uh, I was very surprised that, if nothing else, it's very borderline on warranting violent conduct. I don't think it's a football play. I was surprised that the VAR people didn't ask the ref to go to the monitor and just kind of watch what happens here because Veltman spins the ball. He goes to take it quickly, but the ball is moving, and he knows he can't kick it when the ball is moving, and he does anyways, and he's doing it to catch Rice also with the kick. And again, it's Veltman and Rice that were in the, I think Veltman's trying to get revenge because Rice went into him in that first half. So uh, there you go. Rice sent off, and it's pretty big too as well because he misses the Spurs game. Uh, Arsenal did though had moments though here, and the kind of the funny thing about this is Brighton as the game, Brighton were able to get one back with the Yao Pedro. So Dunk here, he was able to thread a ball, finds Menta. Menta makes a run, splitting Gabriel and Saliba. Not really the best by the two Arsenal center backs. His shot forces Raya to make a save, and then basically pairs it to João Pedro. Nothing that Raya can necessarily do. He can't really recover here. It's probably poor defending by the center backs, but we weren't really done here. Arsenal had moments to win the game. So first one with Havertz, again, long ball just cleared by Gabriel, and this shouldn't really be that big of a problem. But mentioned how Dunk was maybe at fault for the first one. Van Hecke makes a right mess of this as well. Havertz does very well. He has a brilliant first touch to cushion it, and then he moves it forward, where he's able to sprint past Van Hecke, and it's very similar goal or very similar move to what Havertz was able to score on the first one. He's just not able to apply the finish, uh, and then Havertz was able to find that chance for Saka. But the thing I wanted to touch on here is so Brighton, know that they have all this domination. They're getting all these chances left and right. Right has to make saves left and right. Arsenal getting penned in more. Uh, I thought this was a pretty decent moment for Arteta to maybe be a little brave here because I thought it was also maybe going to help Arsenal in a way because a lot of the times they get bogged down a little bit when teams are playing so far behind the ball. or they're playing so defensive minded. They've got so many players in the defensive end. Here it was the opposite. Brighton were pushed all the way up because they knew they had the man advantage, and they were trying to win this game. They were trying to be brave, but by being brave, that means you're playing Van Hecke and Lewis Dunk very high near the halfway line. I thought this would have been clever for Arteta to maybe do something like uh, bring on Martinelli and do Saka together, and basically anytime that ask them to try to make a run and get in behind those two slow center backs. Uh, and we finally did see Martinelli come on, but we saw him come on for Martin Odegaard. It wasn't it wasn't Kai Havertz. I thought that was a little bit of a surprise too. He took Odegaard off, I thought, way too early, and he left Havertz on. And unfortunately for them, Havertz is the one that ended up getting that 1v1 that he couldn't really finish. So a little bit surprised there. Brighton again with 22 shots, but 19 coming in the second half. There's not a ton to look at with the stats. It's probably what you would expect. Arsenal with only 200 passes, but they were playing defend mode that entire second half. The red card does give Arsenal fans a legit excuse, but again, I would have. This was a moment to see what they got really. What happens when they're faced with a little adversity? Kurt Arteta manufactures something, and unfortunately, he really wasn't able to do it. So I don't really know how much you can say about that. I was legitimately shocked that it was Odegaard that was sacrificed. When I thought who is someone that can get on the ball and just find that pass with his feet, find someone making a run in behind. I feel like it would have been someone like Odegaard, so I was a little bit surprised. A little bit surprised by that. One thing to say as well is we've started a couple of these games where Arteta's kind of experimented a little bit at the left fullback spot. It's been Timber, and sometimes it's been. We saw Calafiori actually get a moment here as well, and then I think we saw Zinchenko a little bit towards the end. Uh, and we're probably not going to see Calafiori, so it's probably going to be Timber. So and Timber was very good versus Aston Villa. So it's not all of the end of the world. And but the one problem is you're not going to have Declan Rice, and with Martin Odegaard having the injury, you've got the North London Derby, and then right after that, I think you play City in a couple of weeks as well. So not really the best time to be missing those kind of players. And but a couple in one of the maybe ideas that could have been to be able to help you out with would have been Mikel Merino. Uh, but unfortunately for him, he's already injured himself, and Calafiori as well looks like he's maybe injured during this international break. And so, one thing to maybe helped out at least with their attack is they did make a move on deadline day that I haven't touched on yet. Is they did bring in Raheem Sterling. So finally, you have someone to maybe similar how I mentioned with Liverpool and Salah. Finally, you have someone to maybe give Saka some rest. Maybe the idea can play Sterling at least on the right side, or you can try and play him on the left if you want to as well. Finally, you have a little bit more competition to kind of rotate that a little bit. And so the only issue there is it was a bit surprising that they didn't do anything to improve the front line with Havertz and Jesus. And Ivan Toney was there, and we know he went to Saudi. Maybe that was always going to happen because Saudi clubs can offer wages that Arsenal probably can't. The surprise, though, was Victor Osimhen. Victor Osimhen being right there, and he's gone now to Turkey, and I've been a little bit surprised about that. Now, maybe he's not going to have the work rate that Havertz offers, and that Arteta maybe wants a little bit more of that. But that is the one thing that Jesus and Havertz are very good at doing. Their work rate without the ball is very immense. But I also think the flip side of that is the game is about scoring goals, and when your number 9 is 1v1 with the keeper, you got to put those away if you're going to win a title. Man City have Holland, and that's unfortunately you have to make that comparison. Liverpool having Darwin Núñez, it's kind of the same thing. It doesn't matter many chances you're able to make if you're not able to put those away. So yeah, and that is unfortunately the kind of talking point that probably spills over from this game. So we'll see if there's a hangover effect or not. We'll see what they have in store for the North London Derby. If there's no Martin Odegaard, I don't know what they're gonna do. Because they've sent Fabio Vieira away back to Portugal. Now they have this 17-year-old in Nayori that can maybe be an idea. I wouldn't do it versus Man City or Tottenham. Uh, he's only 17, but I don't. They don't. I don't really know what he's going to be able to do. Maybe he tries Jesus and Havertz together. Maybe that can be the idea. Other than that, it's going to be because Odegaard just everything kind of works with him. And the only complaint I had after the Villa game was, can't Arsenal find a way to get Martin Odegaard the ball involved a little bit more in the final third, and just not having him because he makes Saka work as well. Sometimes Saka isn't able to get the ball from Odegaard, and Saka's not really getting help from Ben White doing an overlap either. Just that's kind of the brain a little bit of their offense, in my opinion. So missing him is going to be massive, and you're not going to have Declan Rice as well. So we're going to see what they do in the North London derby. Like I said, probably advantage advantage to Spurs, and again with Brighton, not a ton to really talk about here. It's not much. There's been talks, at least online, that this is so much different than De Zerbi. I don't really think it is. They're advancing the ball quicker, but I'm going to argue that they have someone like Matoma, they have Yao Pedro back healthy, they have this guy Menta that they brought in, and they also have a Dingra. I mean, Brighton are loaded for attacking options. If Welbeck isn't going to work out, they have Jorginho Rudder that we saw a little bit in the second half here. If Ferguson isn't even available, they still have Evan Ferguson. And they still have Sully Marsh when he returns to play into this. The only thing to talk about is in the midfield should be an area of strength, but it's not. Wyford didn't necessarily have his best debut, and then he got hurt versus Everton. I probably shouldn't say that. He was probably mixed debut. They brought in Matty O'Reilly. That was probably going to be a pretty exciting signing for them, and it looks like he suffered a pretty bad leg injury after his first game. And I was a bit surprised they sold Billy Gilmore. One thing I didn't say about the Man United game was how much better Billy Gilmore was than anyone in Man United, and they've sent him since to Napoli. But they also have this guy Yassine Yayori, who doesn't look 18 anymore. When they brought it in a couple of years ago, looks older, looks bigger, taller. He was calm on the ball as well. And he came on for James Milner. James Milner started this game, which I thought was a big mistake, and then he actually ended up getting hurt. And Ayori and the midfield pairing that ended this game was Ayori and Carlos Baliba. And Carlos Baliba looks an absolute star. I think I've already said as well. That's one of my predictions for the end of the year is a team's going to want to probably pay pretty big money to get Carlos Baliba onto their side. I think he's going to explode. And the only negative to talk about is the back line. Like I said, that the limit to this team is the center back depth or the center back pace. Fullback depth was going to be a concern, but they just brought in Khalidoglu, this Turkish left back that was sensational for Turkey in the summer. They have Estupian, they have Henselwood, so they have some options there. They still have Lamptey as well, so it's not the end of the world. I do think a lot of people have been wondering what can Brighton do. They've spent $200 million or so. I don't really know what the net spend is, but they've spent at least in what they've spent at least. I don't know what the net total because they have had some player sales as well. They've been serious, and they didn't really do this with De Zerbi, but De Zerbi also lost Alexis and Casado in the same summer. He also lost Levy Colwell, but it's interesting how and I was wondering maybe that's the reason why De Zerbi and the ownership disagreed and decided to part ways is because it didn't feel like he was going to the ownership or Tony Bloom was going to spend money. All of a sudden he's brought in this 31-year-old and he's backed him immensely. So maybe it was the idea of what De Zerbi was trying to target that had some issues than necessarily the opposite because we've seen what De Zerbi has done at Marseille. So the Brighton, if nothing else, are going to be very exciting. I don't really know where they're going to finish in the final table. It feels like that's a little bit of a cop out. It is, but I just don't think you can. I don't think you can push anyone seriously with that kind of a back line. To be honest, that said, they can defend deep, and if they want to be a team that wants to play off the counter, they've got pace and they've got loads of attacking options to do that as well. Brighton, if nothing else, is going to be super exciting and super fun. Still, regardless of them having a new manager, and lo and behold, what a way to they found De Zerbi that was at Shakhtar. Now Shakhtar were a Champions League team, but they plucked him out of nowhere, and they plucked this 31-year-old out of St. Pauli, who wasn't even in the top division in the Bundesliga, but was able to promote this young side in Germany, and they found they decided to that's the guy that they wanted to promote. That's the guy they wanted to target, and so lo and behold, maybe they found another gem. And so that is where we are. And then I'll probably move on a little bit quicker. So Man United and West Ham, really not a ton to talk about with this. I mean, Man City and West Ham, 3-1. Holland having the hat trick is probably the only headline. West Ham, not a lot to discuss. They did get a goal because Bowen had a Bowen got free on the wing, and Gvardiol maybe could have done better, but there was just Gvardiol probably didn't feel like there was any kind of danger, and basically a cross or shot by Bowen just hits off Diaz and banks off and goes in to Allison. Now West Ham did hit the post a couple of times as well. They only had like 3 or 4 shots for the whole game, but they were in dangerous moments. The few times they were able to get in behind. Kudus hit the post a couple of times. I think Bowen did as well. Uh, so who knows about that? But Man City do look very, very strong. Another thing to talk about here is we see just Holland gets the headlines really. Kevin De Bruyne was very good again as well. Bernardo Silva as well. But Jack Grealish got to start. Someone that we hadn't seen. Savinho maybe has a little bit of an injury now. Still no Phil Foden. I think he was sick this game. We saw Jack Grealish get a turn to change, and he played quite well for them. When his role is simplified a little bit more. Another thing I was noticing too is Bernardo Silva or Kevin De Bruyne, or even Kovacic or maybe it wasn't Kovacic, but they were making more of a role to when Grealish was getting the ball and going towards goal. Someone was always going out there to offer you some width. Bernardo Silva was really, honestly a genius at doing that. So that's kind of a way to kind of do that. That way, Man City won't necessarily just because sometimes when Grealish plays, he's very good at receiving the ball on the wing, but when he gets it, he always wants to cut towards goal. Uh, but here, the Man City were a little bit better at always keeping someone on there because Pep doesn't like using his fullbacks to offer that. So you need to find a way to get that elsewhere. Basically, what we're seeing is a kind of a 3-2, almost like a 4-1 kind of shape with Holland as the main striker. Not really much to touch on with the goals. The second one, it really is unbelievable. So I guess maybe I'll touch a little bit on that one. Uh, because the second one, I mean, the first goal basically came from I think it's Paqueta. Paqueta just lose the ball. Really great play by Bernardo Silva, and then Bernardo Silva actually plays in Holland. That's maybe the kind of the story of this game. Man City were looking to play Holland in on his runs. They weren't just trying to pass the ball in forever. And then the second goal is it's outrageous. It's an outrageous finish. But here, so Grealish gets the ball on the touchline, dribbles into the box, tries to pick out a teammate, but it looks like City are actually about to lose the ball here. Bernardo Silva does very well to check the body, to keep it in front. Then he finds Rico Lewis, and then Rico Lewis locates Holland. But the thing to touch on here is the move that Holland makes. He starts way off sides, but as City are moving it into the box, you see him quickly get back on sides, and then that way, when he receives the ball from Rico Lewis, he is on sides, and then his first touch is to basically set himself up for a quick strike, and he just rockets it past Areola. Uh, and just when you think, City kind of it's, when City are going to look for him when he's in the box, when he's open, and they're not just going to use him as a decoy. Holland and City both aren't playable. He's too big for center backs. He's quicker than all of them, really. And just the issue is usually they don't like playing that kind of risky ball into him. But when they do, uh, you can't. It's hard to see how you're going to get them because even here, I mean, maybe West Ham, get something off the counter. Maybe City are vulnerable a little bit on the counter. If City play him like this and he's in this kind of form, he honestly could average like a hat trick a game, and that is crazy to say. Though he's got two back to back. Maybe it's not. Um, eh, but it all depends on how comfortable Pep is playing that. And then the third goal comes from Mateus Nunes and Gundogan, getting in on the action. So they brought in Gundogan, and here Mateus Nunes is City are trying to build from back, and it's a long ball upfield that finds Gundogan, and then Gundogan tries to one time it to Nunez. Actually, it's maybe a bad play by Gundogan, but Nunez does well to win that 50-50 duel, and then he sees Holland splitting the center backs, and Nunez plays a very good ball through the middle. Mateus Nunes made a big move last year from Wolves, and he didn't play a whole lot of minutes for Pep and City. City fans have started to be a little annoyed with that, but you saw him shine a little bit here, and it could have been a little bit more than it was. I mean, this was The note I had is this can be what peak City is, because a couple of the chances that I didn't say in this game is Holland being the way he is always going to have attention, and City got so many looks in that first half because they have 23 shots and 8 on target. They had so many 5 big chances. They had so many looks where, yeah, Holland is what he is, and when City have the ball into the box, all the attention is on to him. And so when Doku gets the ball, because Doku was played on the right side, when Doku gets the ball and he beats a man, and he's trying to do a cutback cross or he's trying to cross it in, he doesn't have to try to get something to Holland because all the attention will always be on to him. The ball into top of the box for someone like Bernardo Silva or Kevin De Bruyne. In a lot of these cases, it was Kevin De Bruyne. When Foden plays, it might be Foden. It's going to be on. And I think De Bruyne hit like the post 2 or 3 times, just in that first half. De Bruyne is going to get so many goals and assists as well, just by being able to play this way. And you get it because you got width. You've got real width and real wingers now. Uh, you know, Grealish has always been kind of iffy, but Doku, and when you play Savinho, uh, all the ways that City were kind of vulnerable a little bit in the past, it's not so now. Now we'll see what happens with Savinho. Savinho has a little bit of an injury. We haven't seen Foden into this. Now, does adding Foden actually hurt City? That could be interesting as well. It's because Kevin De Bruyne is a different player than Phil Foden, and can both of them play together? I also think Bernardo Silva is a better player as far as just combining everything together. Bernardo Silva does a whole lot of these things that you don't really notice when you're watching highlights, but when you watch the game, backwards, you see him covering in a bunch of spaces when he makes City tick in ways you just wouldn't really expect, and that'll be kind of the only thing to see is how does Pep fit in those players. Also, they're doing this without Rodri as well. Uh, but the thing to think about is Holland. I mean, he ended up with 27 goals last season, and I remember doing a whole lot from like February to like April. I remember thinking maybe this isn't going to work. It just felt like there was that stretch where he just wasn't really getting played the ball much, and then you look and he still ended up with 27 goals. And that is just the question here. Does Pep care about clean sheets, or does Pep go into a situation where he's like, nah, give him the ball, feed him as much as possible, because it's not Pep ball when Holland gets the ball like that and he's able to lash it in. He only had 9 touches or so in the game as well. Uh, but his movement, he influences everything by that. Again, the defenders have to focus so much on him. He opens everything up for others, including people like Kevin De Bruyne. Um, and Grealish into the team. He did play well. He could have even played better if he had a finish on him. He doesn't. Uh, but again, one thing he is good at doing, he is staying wide, and he does receive the ball on the touchline. Then he moves inside, and you see that for the second goal. Uh, and so clever. And so you've got wings, and you've got Holland, and then what else do you have? You also have very clever final third, very clever people that can get the ball in tight spaces that can make those things work with Bernardo Silva and Kevin De Bruyne and even Rico Lewis. I can throw him in there. And so the only thing to talk about is how does Phil Foden fit into this as well? The PFA Player of the Year. He hasn't gotten into the side yet. I don't really know if he fits with Kevin De Bruyne at the same time, but because I feel like Pep's been trying to hit Phil Foden as kind of a winger, but he doesn't really feel like feels like he's a 10. He's a double 10, uh, or a second striker. And last season, basically, the reason that he had such a good season is Holland was almost the decoy, and the person that really fed off that was Phil Foden. So I don't know. It's a pretty good problem for Pep to have, to be honest. But the other thing too is still no Rodri into this, and so uh, and John Stones and Oscar Bob is out injured for them as well with Savinho. Uh, Outside again of a points deduction in January, I can't make a case for any other team. City is stronger this season than they were last season. They have a lot of the weakness points that I saw last year. I don't necessarily see yet. Now they don't really have. They've been winning these games like quite comfortably, but they still don't really have an option for Rodri if something does happen to him long term. Because I can't see Kovacic and Bernardo Silva or whoever the pivot is. Well, it's been like Rico Lewis and lots of these. I don't really know what the idea would be for there. They don't really have cover anymore. They've sent out Calvin Phillips now, and they haven't brought anyone else in. That's the only thing I can think about, and I've got to think about. I've got to try to be positive because otherwise, yeah, it could be a five-peat or maybe even a six-peat, whatever it is. Uh, it's 8 out of the last 6 years or whatever, 7 out of the last 6 years is where we're looking at. With West Ham, it's not the end of the world. The jury's still out with West Ham. They have players to hit on the counter, as we've mentioned. But so far, I haven't really seen a whole lot of difference between Lopetegui and David Moyes. It does feel like they're kind of setting up the same way. In this game, something to touch on is they did line up with Edson Alvarez for the first game, so he played with Alvarez and the other player that they brought in. I think I have it to play alongside in a pivot. So it wasn't Alvarez by himself, Rodriguez. And so you had Paqueta as the 10, and you had Kudus on the left, Bowen, and Antonio. They haven't been able to get Fulkrug going yet. That's kind of the only thing to think about. Uh, Max Kilman really did struggle with Holland, but Max Kilman played really well in the game before versus Palace. So the jury's still out for West Ham. I don't really know what this team is going to be, but I don't really feel like they'd also struggle. So, and then we'll move on to Tottenham and Newcastle. This one ends 1-1. This could have been well, actually no, I think Newcastle win with 2-1. With Barnes getting the first goal and then Sam Burn own goal, where it felt like Spurs really did take control really in the second half, and then Isaac was able to make it 2-1 after Jacob Murphy was able to come on. He gets played a ball by, I believe it's Joe Linton. Great ball in behind. Spurs were playing in a very aggressive high line in this game. They did it without Mickey Van de Ven, and that ended up, unfortunately costing Pochettino and Spurs. And once you're able to get in behind, all it was is just baiting the keeper to come out, and then it's a pretty easy square ball for Ishak for open goal, really. And this game to me was all about Tottenham having loads of chances and just really misfiring. And it's kind of fitting that the goal that they score comes off Dan Burn and it's an own goal. Uh, I thought that they were really missing a striker. I thought, watching this, the way that they were able to create so many looks, having someone like a Solanke, even a Richarlison, they're going to score so many goals when they actually do get into this team fit. Because there was a lot of domination in here. There was a lot to like if you're a Spurs fan. Maybe the only thing to say is Pochettino got a little too greedy, a little too overconfident because he started off playing Basuma and Sarr together as kind of the pivot. He didn't go with this crazy lineup that we saw versus Everton. Uh, so it was Sarr, Basuma, and then Odegaard, Mads, and then Son, and then Kulishevsky, almost like double tens, or Kulishevsky was in the nine. Uh, but the idea was to try a little bit to have at least two kind of two in the middle to just kind of eat ground to help win some duels. Uh, and that way, when you play Poro and Udogie, both as your wingers, you have some cover for Romero and Dragusin, not having Van de Van. In the second half, we saw Sard get basically pulled, and he brought on another attacking player. And basically, what happens for one of the goals is, or for the final goal is, Madison. I think that was Madison that was even moved back into that pivot kind of position. Is what happened was Madison tries to press and he misses out on a duel with Joe Linton. It was Brendan Johnson that they brought on. That's right. And so what happened was Madison was Odegaard was moved to the left wing. Son basically was playing striker. Kulishevsky as the 10. Madison was dropped deeper next to Basuma. And what happens on the goal is Madison tries to get tight on Joe Linton and it gets beaten. And then from there, Udogie's out of position. And it's just a really easy run and pass for Joe Linton to play in that Jacob Murphy is able to get on the end of. And again, it's just the slow back line, or I want to say necessarily the slow back line, but just Spurs playing that aggressive, and then weren't able to stop the counter on them. So I think it was fitting as well a little bit that Spurs made a change with bringing on Brendan Johnson. That's kind of what led to their goal, and Eddie Howe made a change as well. He brought on. He took off Harvey Barnes, who scored that first goal, and brought on Jacob Murphy, and basically moved Anthony Gordon back onto the left. But that basically is what won, or what got them the second goal that they needed because of the run that Murphy made on the right. And so, uh, it was very interesting. Spurs had to kick themselves because Spurs had 20 shots and 6 on target to Newcastle's only 9 and 3. Tottenham had a lot of the possession. Newcastle were playing defensively, but you have to, and that's kind of the point. That's kind of the problem. I think Eddie Howe realizes he can't play the way that he wants to. He can't play the way that he's wanted to play the last couple of years because just the back line is fully dictating things. It's fully limiting them. So they have to sit deeper. Now the only way to do it is that way you don't have a whole lot of stuff behind him. You can play a little bit more from mid block or even a deep block. Uh, and you do that, so that means when you win the ball, you've got a long way to go away from the goal, but you've got attackers that are quite good at attacking spaces. And So that's kind of they were relying purely for the counter attack, and so they're not able to press high. They're not able to press and ran the ball over, so they can't really concede first. Uh, Even though they did, and they really were on the back foot, and it was no, they didn't. They scored first, uh, and they really were on the back foot in the second half, and they get the goal, and then Spurs again they weren't able to put a whole lot away. Uh, so two things for I guess Spurs fans to think about is without Van de Ven, I feel maybe On should adjust a little bit. He tried Basuma and Sorry in the beginning to try to help with that, and then when he takes one of the defenders off. The other thing too is, do you need to play both fullbacks really high up? With Udogi and the way he's playing Pedro Porro really, really high. Uh, do you make a strange how only do one of them? To be honest, I don't really necessarily want to be a hypocrite because the way that he is playing his team, it is fun, and I like seeing at least a team being adventurous, being aggressive, because sometimes you see the opposite. You see people that want to just defend first and bunker down, and it's not really the most entertaining stuff. But I also want this to be rewarded, and unfortunately, it feels like there is a little bit give and take here. Uh, so maybe got a little too cute. Madison and Kulishevsky being on at played at the same time. It does feel a little bit similar to when Fulham try Emil Smith-Rowe and Pereira. When I get to their game, it does feel a little bit too attack-minded. Also, Madison on a yellow in the second half. He couldn't bring down Joe Linton when he got skipped by. So it just felt, yeah, it was just one of those days, really. Not having Van de Ven did show up, and that is unfortunately where you are. He is so important to their team, and we'll see what if he's able to go versus Arsenal or not. But we get the North London derby coming up, and if nothing else, we were treated to a lot of really good games last year, and there's no reason to think it won't be the same. And then Aston Villa and Leicester City. 2-1 to Villa with Onana with a free kick. Great pass by Jacob Ramsey, who had to come on for, I believe it was Leon Bailey. And then John Duran with a very, very strong header. After I think it was his first touch in the game. He came on for Ollie Watkins, who was struggling a little bit. Ramsey also played a role in that goal as well. And then Facundo Bernete for Leicester. Uh, so Aston Villa played pretty well versus Arsenal. Just a little unlucky with Watkins finishing, and then unlucky here because Watkins also was in behind to finish a couple of chances and wasn't able to do it. Onana basically has been their signing of the summer and hit the ground running for them. Scored another goal here, and also Morgan Rogers has been quite good for them as well. And then Leicester City, it just feels like Steve Cooper hasn't really been able to get the best out of his players so far. A couple of debuts, at least in this game. Oliver Skip played quite well. Unlucky for the goal, but they were also busy in the transfer window. They brought in Oten Edouard of Crystal Palace. They brought in Skip. They brought in Barnette, Jordan Ayew, and they brought in Biel El Canos from Genk, and he was able to get a start. Oh, they brought in Mimith Okeali, the center back, and he didn't actually have his best game. There's a little bit of a theme in week 3 where between Southampton, Leicester, and Ipswich, where teams trying to play almost be a little too cute from the back, and just being a little just a pretty poor pass here and there, and immediately you're playing the other team in. You're really helping them out, and I think the free kick that leads to the first goal comes from a terrible pass by Okoleali. Plays it to where Oliver Skip has just no chance, and he gets the ball taken off him, and then Skip has to basically bring down Ollie Watkins, or Ollie Watkins is going to have a free run at the goal, and so free kick, and then just Leicester allowed a. It's a very clever design for a free kick. I believe it's Paul Torres that actually screens two players. That's able to find it's a free pass open to Jacob Ramsey, and then Ramsey basically just has the square ball into the box, completely free cross, and he's able to find Onana. But the first half, the storyline was just the moments that Watkins was getting, and just the only problem was, uh, going back to what happened with Arsenal as well. There's a bit of a similar storyline here, just not being able to get off the ground firing, and Duran is kind of making a case a little bit for himself. Uh, and then a couple at the end, there was a little moment for Leicester to maybe make a little noise. They brought in Valde, a a big play for them last year in the championship. He at least played a role a little bit in one of their in the Bernetta goal. I think it comes from a nice volley, but it really comes from a nice little direct play by Valde. He's able to beat the young Villa right back, making a debut, gets to the byline, the cross was cleared. Bernetta was able to smash in the rebound. And Leicester did get a free kick kind of late where Tielemans was a bit rash. Uh, went on Vardy, but basically the ref didn't award the spot kick, and then VAR basically saw that Tielemans did barely get the ball first, but that could have been a storyline as well. Tielemans versus Leicester back into the Premiership, where Tielemans probably was most known for playing, and almost allowed gifted Leicester City a point basically to get back into the game. The other kind of talking point was Leicester did score in the second half, but it was very, very strange. There was a lot of controversy here. After Skip was played a ball, he tries to square it to Vardy into the box, but the ref blew the whistle to stop the play dead. And after Vardy basically scored, the goal didn't count because the ball basically brushed up against the ref's legs before it got to Oliver Skip, and that's why the ref blew the whistle. Villa were a little bit stretched and a little unlucky, or a little lucky there, but so a little bit of a Leicester with some almost. I didn't really feel like they were that bad. Now they were a little sloppy when trying to sloppy with the ball. They were quite good at moments with it, but the few times they did give it away, Aston Villa were in. Not a whole lot of shots, just 9 for Leicester, 10 for Aston Villa. 4 big chances for Aston Villa as well. Couple, again, very, very simple ones for Ollie Watkins to put away, and he wasn't able to do it. Leicester with 0.5 XG, 1.5 for Aston Villa. Leicester with majority of possession and majority of passing. Uh, so that's probably all to really talk about with Villa. I mean, Leon Bailey is also another that so two players that Aston Villa really relied on last season was Ollie Watkins and Leon Bailey, and I think we've seen the remnants of that already to start the season. Leon Bailey was struggling versus in the first game. I thought he struggled versus Arsenal. He was actually getting kicked a lot versus Arsenal as well. I was surprised he was able to even finish that game. And he wasn't able to. He was only able to go like 10 or so minutes in this game as well. And so came on Jacob Ramsey, and he was involved for both the goals. So good for him. Good for Aston Villa to at least have a little bit of some depth in an area that didn't feel like they had. They were able to bring in Morgan Rogers last January, and he's looked to his best as well. And they still have people like Emi Buendia to bring in. They still have Jacob Philogene as well to factor in this as well. And then John Duran. John Duran just gives off something that Ollie Watkins really doesn't. Watkins gives you someone that you want to. Watkins just gives you someone that you always have in the back of your mind is someone that's very good, maybe not elite in the box. John Duran does the opposite. He gives off a pure number 9. He has ridiculous shot power. He hasn't played a whole lot. He also showed off he has a very strong head power. And again, Watkins could be exhausted again from the season that he had last year and the summer. Maybe they need to rely on John Duran more. I just feel like when he's in the box, when he gets onto the ball, he's got a. We don't want to say he's like Holland, but he's got a strike, and he's got something different about him. When he gets the ball, you feel like Villa are possibly going to score. Where Watkins, even on the 1v1, you feel like maybe he converts it, or maybe he doesn't. That maybe is a little harsh because Watkins was superstar good last season, but it feels like last season was maybe the anomaly. I don't really know. Uh, I can't really go at him as well because out of maybe Salah and it's not necessarily Holland. Out of Salah, it was like Harry Kane, and it was maybe someone else. Ollie Watkins has been one of the most successful, goal scorers for the last like 3 or 4 seasons in a row now, with double digits, maybe in like 15 plus. All of those seasons. So it's not like he's bad finisher. It's just, anyways, I don't really know where I'm going with that. Uh, but I do feel like Unai Emery maybe needs to tweak this a little bit. How do you get Ross Barkley a little bit more involved? Uh, do you find a way? How do you find a way to basically sit John McGinn as well? I feel like he's kind of a little bit of the weak link, and sometimes when they get on the ball. But that is like kind of the only thing. They're probably fine with that. Leicester City again, very similar to Southampton, and when they're playing from the back, they can be a little too cute with it. How long is that going to last? They get done on a set piece. That's not great. They also get basically this 2 goals came from set pieces. The John Duran one came off after a free kick that was recycled. So. And then just really poor passing decision by Okalali to Oliver Skip. Those are the 2 goals. So something for Leicester fans to think about. But the other thing too is, Steve Cooper back into the league. I don't really see a whole lot of ideas as far as attacking patterns, at least so far. One thing I can say is when Mavli came on, and you have Fadawadu on the other side, there's something here. So we'll see. We'll see how Leicester City are able to kick on. Joining the league. One thing I can say, because I haven't really gotten to it yet, is the 3 promoted sides, from this season are already significantly already competitive, already getting points in some of these, and already just all 3 are much, much more advanced in where they are as far as, stage wise, uh, than than the 3 promoted sides that were happened last season. It took until like November for anyone to really get a point or to get even close to being competitive. Uh, and that's the reason why all three went down last season. The season before last, all 3 stayed up as well. So it's possible. I don't know. I'm not going to say all 3 will stay up here, but the fact that all 3 are already quite good already, um, I don't really know what that means for the rest of the league because a lot of teams, a couple of clubs last season really did get lucky by being too cute, and the only reason why they were able to kind of stay up is because just, the 3 last season were just significantly, historically bad, essentially. The clubs like Brentford need to maybe, be wary of that because Brentford was really, really, really close. Nottingham Forest was the last one that was really close. So, if that is the case, if these clubs are a little bit more competitive than what we saw last season, that does bring in a couple more teams as far to be a little bit more worried about. Uh, and that's just kind of a throwaway thought. Then we get to Chelsea and Crystal Palace. Don't really want to spend a ton of time on the game. 1-1. Chelsea had moments to win it, uh, but Crystal Palace took a while to get going, and Crystal Palace were lucky that Will Hughes wasn't sent off with the early 2 yellow cards. Jackson with the first goal. It's unfortunately one of the few times when Palace was able to actually get forward in the first half, and they get caught a little bit with Mark Gahey gets a little too cute. He goes too far upfield to try to win a 50-50 ball. Chelsea are actually able to counter instead, and Madueke does a very good job to get past Will Hughes, and Will Hughes can't bring him down because he's already on one of those yellows. And then Madueke does very well to find in Cole Palmer. Cole Palmer makes a very nice run, and then Cole Palmer is able to find Jackson for the very easy goal. So easy counter. Chelsea had a number of moments in the first half where with Palmer and Madueke, Jackson as well, didn't come off, and then in the second half things changed a little bit. Basically, Will Hughes got lucky not to get a second yellow, and basically Oliver Glasnow took him off, brought in Decore. I thought that actually gave Palace a little bit more kind of a steal, a little bit better of a. I thought the chemistry. I thought just the way that I just felt they looked a little bit more calm, both in possession and out of it. Uh, with Adam Wharton and Decore, back to back with each other. That's really good for Palace fans because Decore is coming off an Achilles just last season. Uh, So that I thought that kind of stabilized things a little bit for Palace, and then lo and behold, they get a worldie from Eberici Eze, and it gets to 1-1, and then possibly could have been won by Chelsea at the very end. There was a moment for Jackson, but I believe it's even Mark Gahey, or it might even be the goalkeeper Dean Henderson that's able to get a very late block to win a point. Uh, so I mean, coming into this, Chelsea, I've got empty the clip. I don't really know if I should really say that, but Chelsea unloaded. I guess I can say that on Wolves the weekend before. They also made some news about it. Let Raheem Sterling go. They brought in Yao Felix. They brought in Jaden Sancho. Madueke hat trick. How would he? Maybe Cole Palmer follow that up. And then with Palace, they lost Olise. They've lost Anderson, but they did. They held on to Adam Wharton. They held on to Mark Gahey and Eberiche Eze. But they also brought in Maxence Lacroix, a center back that, again, I mentioned him and maybe a podcast or two before. I thought Man United could have maybe targeted him because he is this aggressor. He can play in a high line. They also brought in Tosin. Is it I'll remember his name. Chalba, Trevor Chalba. They also brought in him. So Palace have been they also now they've lost Olise, and they've brought in Sar. We haven't really seen him yet. I feel like that's maybe the one thing that Palace needs to maybe be less patient about. I'd probably like to see him immediately start on the right wing. Instead, we've been seeing Dashi Kamada being played instead as kind of that double 10, and he offers you a lot of good things, but he's not gonna have that 1v1 ability. He's gonna do a lot of good work without the ball. He's gonna when he gets into the box, he's got a pretty good shot on him, as we saw in this game. But he's not the same player, and it feels like they are kind of missing a little of that star 1v1 ability, because you have that, and you last year they also had it with Elise in the 10 games that they were able to play with each other. They haven't really been able to replace that. That's kind of the only thing to really touch on. Um, but that is it. I mean, for Chelsea fans, after doing what they did versus Wolves, only 13 shots. They did get 7 on target. They did get 5 big chances as well. But it wasn't it wasn't like they would have expected. They won an XG at like 2.3 to Palace's point 0.5. Loads of the ball, 63%, 500 in some passes as well. Interesting thing to see here is Palace were playing in a back five, and it seemed like Chelsea's idea was actually try to play them with basically six. They tried to play with six front attackers. But the interesting thing here is one thought I had, even with the Wolves game, is I didn't really love their shape even before that, because I don't like the way they're playing the fullbacks. So anyone that I feel like that can defend on the wing, I feel like can shut this down, because it was way too easy for Madueke to just be able to beat Ait Nouri. Sometimes Ait Nouri was even out of position, so it was easy for him to take on the center back last week. Uh, I don't really know how much I really buy Chelsea being an offensive powerhouse. That is a note I had after the Wolves game when they scored 6 goals. But the other thing too is Enzo Maresca is isolating his wingers, because he's asking his fullbacks to do things entirely differently. Both are inverting in Mark Cucurella and the way he's playing Marlo Gusto. Marlo Gusto is almost like a midfielder now. The way they're playing, both are kind of midfield. Sometimes Marlo and the way they play Mark Cucurella is almost like a third center back. So they're doing that kind of back three, the thing that I was talking about with Liverpool and Slot. It's one thing you can do, and Pep kind of does that with as well when he plays Gvardiol. He plays him in a back three, and you can do that. That makes you better, with the rest of the defense. But what you're doing there is you're isolating your wingers without the fullback help, without the overlap. You need to get that somewhere else. And the problem that they tried here is they tried to make that extra man with Enzo Fernandez, and doesn't he doesn't have the engine to necessarily do that. He's not gonna make that run on the wing where people are going to really be threatened by it. They're gonna think it's a decoy, or he's not even gonna do it. And Chelsea basically got into a lot of a problem there. So, and sometimes they were using Cole Palmer to basically be used as an overlap. I feel like that's wasting his talent. So the wingers, I thought, were struggling a little bit. When Chelsea brought in Pedro Neto in that second half, it didn't feel like that changed much either. So uh, There was a decent, game by Moses Caicedo. I don't really feel like Enzo Fernandez and Caicedo work together. And the first game for Man City, I thought the best player for Chelsea was actually Roman Lavia, and we haven't seen him since that. So uh, that's kind of just where we are, where I am with Chelsea. Also Levy Colwell and Fofana, just I thought at least for Wolves, weirdly enough. I thought they actually got very lucky that Wolves didn't score more goals. Colwell and Fofana have been a little shaky to start this as well. Uh, the other thing to touch on was I thought Nicholas Jackson, at least at least for Wolves. Again, I am a little bit surprised they didn't try for Ivan Toney, but they brought in Yao Felix. I don't feel like that really is what you need, but sometimes when they're looking for just someone to be an extra man, when because Jackson can drop and then he can turn and then make a run up field. His touch isn't always as as crisp as you would want. His first touch is sometimes it's heavy and sometimes the Chelsea lose the ball. And So that is where they are. The other thing that surprised me is they made a last decision move to ship out Sterling to bring in Jaden Sancho. Jadon Sancho is another player that I don't feel like he's got 1v1 ability by himself. I feel like he needs someone to make an overlap with. I feel like he's almost like a 10, not necessarily a 1v1 kind of winger. So a bit surprised by this. So you have Neto and Madueke, and then you have Felix, Mudrick, and Nkuku. And Nkuku is another that we haven't really seen, pan out that well for them. And then you add Sancho to that. Uh, that's just a whole lot of mess to me. But I've been a little negative on Chelsea for a couple of years now, and it just feels like I'm not the only one. Like their ownership maybe even has a civil war now between Todd Bowley and Clearlake, the other guys in charge. So I don't really know what to think about them. Like I've kind of said that for 3 or 4 seasons now, and maybe one of the reasons why there is a little bit of that civil war with the ownership is maybe one is someone's a little upset at losing Pochettino and bringing in this kind of a Pep acolyte in Enzo Maresca, and I don't know. I don't feel like the way you beat Man City or the way you catch up to them isn't really trying to copy them. And I feel like I'm a bit surprised that they left off Pochettino because finally he had Chelsea moving a little bit. They've also made a big decision to ship out Conor Gallagher to bring in, the player that Enzo Maresca likes in that Leicester player in Dewsbury Hall. I just don't feel I feel like Gallagher's the better player. If Atletico Madrid has the decision to sign both, I feel like they're going to pick Conor Gallagher. They shipped him out and they shipped Conor Gallagher out, and they were so desperate to do it to bring in Yao Felix. And I don't really know how Felix necessarily fits into this either. Uh, Felix and Nkuku are kind of number tens, but you also have Cole Palmer. It's a mess. There's too many profiles that just feel too similar to me. But again, I could just be being a hater. Uh, and then with Crystal Palace, the notes I have is they need to trust Sarr more. Also, Mateta had a very long Olympics, and it's taken a while for him to kind of get his legs going. Um, I don't know. I mean, they're not having Elise is showing up. It just is. And finally, one positive is Eze, perhaps could have had 2 or 3 goals to start the season. He's been very good for them in every game. It just hasn't really had his scoring boots, and he found a way to actually shake off that rust with probably goal of the weekend in this one. And then we get on to really what was game of the weekend, but unfortunately, I'm running a little bit for time, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. In Everton and Bournemouth, 2-3. It was 2-0 for Everton with Michael Keane. Michael Keane at least helped out on the offensive end here. After a free kick, Everton were able to kind of recycle it. Michael Keane still in the box, and he's able to put it away. And then Calvert Lewin, really great ball played in by Dwight McNeil. Nice little threaded ball into the box. Calvert Lewin's able to finish. 2-0. It could have been a little bit more. There was a lot of positives actually for Everton, all up until really the 82nd minute, and then Semenyo makes it 2-1 after 10 minutes before that, he got into a mini tussle, and maybe it's small, but just it felt like maybe that just kind of got Bournemouth to refocus a little bit more into the game. But here, Semenyo was able to get on the end of a finish where there's just a little mistake where someone loses Watatara's run, Django Watatara's run. I think Tarkowski is too late to close down on that. It might be Watatara that gets out wide, and he has a free cross into the box Tarkowski can't get there to stop the cross on, stop the supply, and just it's a perfect cross. Boss is able to find Semenya back post that I guess Mikolenko is just a little late on. This I guess just misfortune really. It's not like it's not poorly defended. It's just Everton are there. But after that it does get bad. So we get 2-2 with Cook. This is the one I feel like if Sean Dyche is watching tape, he's gonna want this one back. That's the one he's probably gonna point to. So here Everton are trying to just go forward and they just lose the ball. Winning 2-1, you don't really need to go forward, but I don't know. It felt like maybe they had lost momentum here after a game that they really had dominated. I mean, Bournemouth hadn't done a sniff at, but after they got made it a 1-goal game, it just felt like that kind of made Everton a little bit shaky. So they're trying to go forward. Maybe they go in for a second one. They lose it, and then the fullback's out of possession. Just one long ball onto the right channel. Suddenly, Bournemouth have a 3v3, and eventually a ball is crossed in, and it finds Lewis Cook unmarked, who's able to head it in. So 2-2, and then after that, things really did get a little bonkers because Bournemouth couldn't. After Bournemouth couldn't lay a glove, Pickford had to make 3 or 4 saves just to really keep Everton from throwing this. So and this happened after Pickford didn't have to scratch his nose. Again, the first 82 minutes or so, and then they do win with Sinistera, and it's just a simple long ball to find Clivert, who then crosses it back post, and again, Sinistera is able to head it home. But this comes from a play earlier where Tavernier gets onto the ball, and he successfully drags Mikolenko to follow him. And sometimes you want this, sometimes you don't, because it's good to see that at least you're following. You're not just sitting back. You're still having energy. You're still going after the ball. But by doing that, basically, Tavernier is clever. He drags Mikolenko, the left fullback, to just kind of follow him, and he's out of position, and Bournemouth are able to move the ball quickly from one end to the other. And when that happens, the cross comes in, Mikolenko's out of position, and there's just no one at the back post. And lo and behold, uh, Sinistera is who had just come on, and there you go. But also Coleman is a statue, and he doesn't do enough to stop the cross in coming in from Clivert. And so Everton were. One thing to say is they were terrible to start last year's campaign, and the thing that saved them was Braithwaite coming into the side, and they still have him. He's just injured, so yeah, that's not really helping them now. But at least when he gets healthy, maybe that'll help them. Uh, at least versus for Spurs, one positive is I thought Roman Quintel, the right back that made his debut, I thought he actually did a decent job. But Sean Dyche maybe disagreed because immediately we see Samish Coleman back into the side, and I don't. I want to be tried. I want to try to uh, be level headed. I want to be fair. This team without Braithwaite is a relegation level backline. It's bad, and it's very very porous. And you just Bournemouth did nothing for 82 minutes, and they still get 8. They still not only did they get 3 goals, they got like 8 shots on target after the last like 12 minutes. Uh, after they were able to really just get Everton out of position a little bit. When they had a chance, when they were forcing Everton to defend, Everton were all over the place. And Bournemouth are here to start the season with Andre Ariola, and quite a good way to start. Unlucky I thought to not get more than they did versus Newcastle, and here you go, you win here. Uh, Maybe just one thing to kind of touch on for Everton is one positive is Ndiaye made a debut, and we did see a little bit of a different lineup. We saw Ndiaye kind of like a number 10 with playing with Calvert-Lewin, and then you had McNeil and Harrison. And if nothing else, Ndiaye gives you a little 1v1 ability. McNeil can have his cross on him. He's very one-footed. Harrison has a cross on him as well, but he's never going to beat anyone at all 1v1. He's going to send the ball into the box basically, and that'll help Calvert-Lewin. But Ndiaye is someone that actually does have a little of that carry ability. He can get the ball, he can beat a man on the dribble. He looks like he had a shot on him as well. This was at least this is quite exciting, and they brought him in from Marseille. So he just had some Champions League experience last season. That's at least something for Everton fans to be pretty hopeful about because he was superb. Uh, Everton weren't bad, but again, just when it got time to defend, they couldn't. Coleman doesn't have the legs, especially playing 90 minutes. He doesn't have the legs to be able to get out wide and to stop a cross in. And Tarkowski without Braithwaite, Tarkowski looks kind of like Harry Maguire, like he's too slow as well. Speaking of Harry Maguire, Michael Keane. It's unfortunate because he's responsible for getting them one of the goals to get them the lead. But he's also very, very slow-footed, and, just the way that Sean Dyche likes playing, he likes this team being very, very aggressive. He likes them being, they're one of the most direct sides, at least last season, they're one of the most direct, from back to front sides, in the entire league, and you do that, you have a lot of turnover, you're asking your team to cover up and make a lot of ground. You can't do that with a slow back line, and that kind of gets back to the theme that I'm keep going back to. So that's kind of where we are with Everton. Bournemouth was 17 shots and 7 on target. That was not the case until like they 80 minutes into the game. Everton with 18 shots and 8 on target. Uh, the XG was kind of even for both, and just 5 big chances apiece as well. But all 5 came after the 82nd minute for Bournemouth. Just Everton have to just kick themselves here, and so that's kind of where you are. And so the only negative thing they say is, same as week 1, I mentioned, I was attacking Ashley Young, but Coleman's kind of the same thing, and Michael Keane, just that really isn't good enough. They need Braithwaite to return immediately. I guess some positive is, McNeil finally woke up a little bit, and did Calvert-Lewin, and not only Calvert-Lewin woke up and got scoring, if he can, find a way to just keep his body healthy, and he's been able to play since, well, going back to March or so. Maybe they found a way to get his body right, because that took a really long time, as well. He's been able to somewhat be healthy week to week. Now, knock on wood. Uh, maybe they will be okay. I mean, already I'm looking like a bust here, because I picked them to maybe be close to being the top 10. That's not going to be that's not going to be a case. They were the 4th best defense as far as goals conceded last season. Pickford was amazing. I kind of forgot about that, but also Braithwaite. Without Braithwaite, man, this team's going to be lucky to stay up. But I don't know. With Sean Dyche, he's very good at doing that, and it's a very long season. They were terrible to start the season last season as well, so maybe it's not the end of the world. And then we get to Brentford and Southampton. Brentford win 3-1. It was the Embremo and Weiser show, and then Sukashawa in the 90th minute for Southampton. This game, though, did not have a 3-1 kind of feel to it. It started off where Southampton actually were getting a couple really good chances, but the theme kind of set in a little bit, like, around the 30th minute or so, where Southampton were trying very hard each time to play from the back, and Brentford was trying very, very hard to play very high up, to play very aggressive, and they were baiting Southampton in a couple of mistakes. And right before the goal even happened, uh, I think it's Kyle Walker-Peters. He loses the ball, and Brentford probably, I think it's Damsgaard. Damsgaard probably could have gone for goal or done a little bit better than he did. So Southampton got a little warning sign, got away with that one, and then it doesn't really help them, because just a few minutes later, kind of the same thing happened. Southampton, play into a little bit of a mistake, high turnover in the other end. Kevin shot it as well to beat a man, gets a shot off, and it deflects off the post, and then Mbremo's there for the first time finish. It's a really, really good finish by Mbremo, because that's not the easiest finish. So it's 1-0. It was 1-0 going into the second half, and Southampton actually, made a pretty aggressive change. They brought in 3 or 4 attackers, and Southampton, for that first 10, 15 minutes in the second half, were the better side. Brentford were the team actually on the back foot a little bit, and then lo and behold, right after Kevin Shota had a free header that he kind of missed on, so Brentford actually you'll find a way to get back into it a little bit as well. I think there was a goal. It was a goal kick or some kind of a corner kick, and Southampton again tried to play from the back after the keeper gets it, and they just make an absolute royal mess of things, and basically play it right into. I think it's to do it's Bednarik, and I believe it's I forget who the other. It's Bednarik and it's Stevens. Basically, run into each other, and that's all it takes. Basically, Brentford win the ball back high again, and then it's just very easy for Brentford to finish, and he does a very good finish there. And then I think Brentford get a third goal by just having a long throw in, and they just that's probably the one where you think maybe they could have done a little bit better. Ramsdale actually made his debut, and he had a very good game. To be honest, Brentford maybe could have scored a lot more goals in the first half, if not for a couple really big Ramsdale saves. But Ramsdale maybe didn't do the best, at least on the throw in, because it's just a long throw in. Ball goes over his head, and basically there's Weiser just kind of almost get any kind of touch. He almost like carries the ball, or he almost yeah, basically keeps the ball with him as he crosses the line. And then, Southampton was able to finally get something with Shigakawa. There was there was a lot to like in here, other than where the goals were conceded, or where the goals came from for Southampton. I mean, 18 shots and 6 on target. Brentford with 20 shots. Brentford were much better at creating looks. But Brentford were much better at creating looks than they did versus Liverpool. That's probably expected. Southampton, though, were also much better at creating looks than they did versus Nottingham Forest. So I don't really know where this necessarily puts Brentford as well. I think one of the takes I had was it's very good that Brentford got Southampton early. Because I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little foolish, but I feel like Southampton have something here. 63%, 500 and some passes, but not just that, because they did this for Nottingham Forest as well. They got 18 shots and 6 on target. Uh, uh, the uh, the manager that has come in has already made some changes, in my opinion, some positive changes, and just his only issue is, yeah, you're going to play from the back, and the reason why you play from the back is you get control of the game, and if you can do that successfully, you do control the tempo of the game to your liking. But if you can't, if it doesn't matter if you can do that 99% of the time, like we saw versus Newcastle, because that basically what we saw versus Newcastle was the same thing. They were fine doing it 99% of the time. It's just the one time that they had a mess up actually led to the goal, and that's kind of what happened a little bit here. So there's still some positive things for Southampton. For Brentford, I do think there's some positive things as well. Frank maybe recognized what they were going to do, and he set up the press very high with 4 players. Also, Thomas Frank did something different with what he lined up with. He played uh, Janelt actually kind of almost like their fullback. He found a way to get Damsgaard onto the pitch. So he played 3 attackers in Shada, Wiza, and Bremo. He set Lewis Potter, who didn't feel like necessarily played that bad for first Liverpool. So we saw a different Brentford side. There's still no room so far for Fabio Cavallo. So that's kind of the only thing as far as former Liverpool or Liverpool fan kind of rooting for a former player. Uh, Brentford without Ivan Toney as well. There was a shot, a chance for a free header that Toney probably would have put away. But one of the thoughts I had, at least versus Crystal Palace, when I saw Brentford play, is you've got 3 attackers in Shada, Riza, and Mprema that can play out wide or can play through the middle, and they're very interchangeable. Where if Tony was playing, it would be predictable. He would drop maybe for the ball to try to play make and do the hurricane stuff, but eventually he's going to be in the box and he's gonna cross gonna come in, whether you can defend it or not. It would be a different story, but it would be a little bit more predictable. With here, you don't really know who's going to eventually make that run through the middle. You don't know where the ball is necessarily going to be played. All 3 can make those runs. All 3 can get the ball out wide if you need to as well. It allows more fluidity into their attack. And just the only thing for Brentford is, can you get those attacking players the ball more? Now they were able to create 20 chances here. I liked the idea of him playing Damsgaard. Damsgaard gives him a little something different in that midfield that I feel like Yanel doesn't. Sometimes Brentford can be very, very, I don't want to say safe, but very rigid, or very they don't create a whole lot of open play. Norgard can do some decent things with the ball, but it's always safe. Jensen's probably the best passer, but it's very reliant on Jensen. And I just feel like sometimes when the midfield is Jensen, Jenelt, and Norgard, they're not really able to. They can go long, but they can't really create much as far as finding in someone into like a 10 area and being able to create in the final third. I feel like they're very reliant usually on just 3 attackers kind of doing stuff 1v1. And here, yeah, they get the 3 goals by turning people over with the 3 attackers. But I do feel like they were better. Damsgaard, when he was getting in some pretty good looks, maybe it was unlucky not to add more. And they also have Ivan Tiago to eventually add to this after December. So Brentford fans maybe were a little worried coming into this. There's maybe some reasons for some optimism. Also, all of a sudden, Nathan Collins has been very, very good for them. I thought he was a little bit of a shaky buy for them last season. And it's another season, another game. Well, I thought he was superb for Liverpool as well. It's another game where he's been quite good for them. So you have Collins and Pinnock. You still have Ben Mee to add to this, and you brought in Steg Vandenberg, from Liverpool as well. So they've tried to shore up a little bit there. I still feel like they're a little weak on the fullback spot. You need Rico Henry. If not, but until you get him, I really did like the idea of Van de Ven because you can maybe invert him a little bit, so that eventually gives you a second midfielder as well. I feel like Van de Ven is quite good on the ball when he's played a little bit deeper. I just sometimes he's a little too safe. But when you're trying to do some build up play, that's fine. I like what I saw from Thomas Frank. And one thing you can say about Brentford and Frank, he's very good at changing games. He's very good at making adjustments. Sometimes it's not always the best. I just feel like there's some positive things there for them. And then with Southampton, uh, similar with Russell Martin. There's some things for him to be positive here too. Ramsdale I didn't feel like he made a ton of mistakes. It was Bednarik and Stevens, or Howard Bellis as well, and just they've already shown some improvement. But again, if you're gonna play from the back. Burnley tried playing, came into the league and they tried playing this kind of way, and it did kind of send them down. But the other thing to kind of talk about is I don't really know if that is the case or not because the devil's advocate is Burnley nearly played themselves out of danger, and the only reason why they ended up going down is because they made a goalkeeper change, and he ended up kind of farting around a little bit. Uh, again, and a couple of things to say as well. Adam Armstrong had a chance to get a goal right before the half. Uh, Probably could have done better, but he doesn't really have the legs. I don't really like what I've seen from him so far. He doesn't really feel like an EPL striker, at least leading the line. Maybe he can be a backup striker or second striker. Cam Archer, I think, should start for them. I thought they looked better after that change. I really liked this Dibbling player that they brought on. He completed 5 dribbles in the second half. Uh, Sugar Hara, the guy that got the goal, he's been quite good for them so far as well. And they brought in Leslie Ugachukwu of Chelsea on loan. So you can find a way to maybe squeeze him a little bit more in the midfield instead of maybe Smallbone and Flynn. Again, it's early, but it's nothing else. At least they're already competitive. Leicester's competitive. Ipswich is competitive. Outside City, and you don't really want to start off with City and Liverpool, but at the same time, you get those two out of the way, and Leicester City did not look that bad versus Fulham. I actually thought, getting to that game now. I thought they were the better team in the second half, to be honest, and so that gets us to Fulham and Ipswich. Liam Delap gets the first goal. It's one of the better first goal or one of the better goals in the week. To be honest, he gets the ball from like the halfway line. He has a lot to do when he gets it, but shows a little carry, and then he shows an incredible hit to pick up the corner. Maybe Leno could have done better. Maybe he's surprised a little bit by the guy actually hitting it from where he does. And then Adama Traore, a couple minutes after that, pretty good run by Robinson, Anthony Robinson, USA, and crossing the box finds Adam Traore wide open in the penalty area, and you thought maybe this is going to be a high flying game, and that was kind of all the action that we saw. Uh, Fulham though did some news or did some transfer market business on deadline day. So mentioned already they brought in Smith Rowe and they decided to go to Arsenal again. They brought in Reece Nelson. So it'll be interesting to see how they try to fit him. They've lost William, but they brought in Smith Rowe and Nelson to kind of help out with the wings. They've also the emergence of Adama Traore. He looks the player that he was a couple of years ago when he was at Wolves. He looks very, very good again. He looks more refined, in my opinion. That's probably the best he's looked. It's not just the goal. He's making better decisions, in my opinion, so far. And he's very good for Man United in his first game. And I thought he was very good in the second game as well. So there you go. And then they brought in Sanderberger, and then they brought in Anderson of Joachim Anderson, the center back of Crystal Palace, that can play in a high line. That's very good with the ball at his feet. And Sanderberger is a little bit bigger. He's 6'4" or so, or 6'3", and so he can. He's not really going to be Yao Polina. No one is, but maybe he's going to be the idea. Maybe him and someone next to him, like a Sasa Lukic, or however they try to do that. But that is kind of the theme with Fulham so far is they are a little bit of a incomplete side. It doesn't feel like Marco Silva really knows what is his best lineup because what he's doing is Andres Pereira and Lukic, and then he's playing Smith Rowe as like the 10, and then he's got Alex Iwobi, who I think is a midfielder. He's playing him out wide, and then he's playing Adama, and then you have Munoz. So I think there's a way to kind of tweak this a little bit where you can be a little bit more you can be more balanced, I guess you can say. I think they've been struggling a little bit because of that. Also, you've lost Tosin Adebayo, they've lost Tim Ream, Diop and Bassi isn't really. Bassi when he's played has been quite good, but Diop is a little hit and miss. Tade, no Castagna so far. But Tade and Robinson are both pretty good fill blocks. It's just it's in that middle with Pereira. Played a little bit deeper. I feel like it's uncomfortable for him. I think it's uncomfortable a little bit for Fulham. And when the game got a little bit more kind of even, a little more kind of transition based, a little bit more where it wasn't really Fulham had full control. I thought they were giving the ball a little bit away. I thought it was just too attack minded in my opinion. You just have Lukic and then you have Pereira, ESR, Irobi and Adama, and then Munoz all being very, very front footed. They all want the ball. They all want to maybe take someone on. It's not really it, it, it it's very it's too repetitive in too many positions in my opinion. I could be wrong. So and I thought in the second half, there was a good 20-minute stretch where I thought Ipswich just took complete control of the game. I think everything switched. I think the stats back it up as well. There's a lot of things for Ipswich fans to be really happy about too. In fact, towards the end, it looked like they had a chance to win it with Hutchinson. And so they brought in and they've made some changes themselves. Calvin Phillips gets his debut start. I thought he was good. They brought in Benny Ogbeni, Chidozie Ogbeni. There we go. From Luton Town, who had a pretty good, I thought, last season for debut for Luton Town, one of the fastest players in the league. Hutchinson was a big player for them in the championship. I think he had 26 goals and assists combined. And you see it, when he gets on the ball, he's not afraid to he's not shy at getting on it and taking a shot. And also this guy Sammy Smotrich, who they brought in, has a pretty good he got a I think he got a goal versus Man City in his debut, and I thought he was quite good for them as well. The only kind of maybe negative is Leif Davies. They keep try to fit him in. He struggled a little bit just to start. He's quite good on the ball, but at least it looks defensively he can get a little bit out of it. But this was positive again, and just the way that they're able to just flip things around. Fulham had like 60 plus percent of the ball in that first half, majority of the shots. Everything flipped in the second half. And so, if you're nothing else, that's showing, they can maybe make adjustments a little bit. Ipswich had 63% of the ball in the second half. Ipswich outshot Fulham, 11 shots to only nine. Low XG for both teams. Really, there was, if nothing else, these teams were very, very even on the eye, at least over the 90 minutes. It looked like Fulham could have boat raced them in the first half. I thought it was interesting how Fulham were not able to get Adama Traore the ball nearly as much as they probably would have wanted to in that second half. That was maybe one better adjustments that Ipswich were able to make. And once that happened, you kind of took a little bit away from what Fulham would have wanted to do. A couple of chances came to Smith Rowe, and maybe he could have done better. But also with a couple of chances that Fulham were able to, or that Ipswich were able to get some pretty big blocks. Jacob Greaves, I think, had a massive block that probably stopped an outright goal. So lots of things again to be positive about for Ipswich fans, and that kind of gets us to especially mention Hudson. Hudson, it's one thing for a young player to come in. Sometimes the stars in the championship they don't always pan out. Hudson, since it's so far at least looks ready for the level. We'll need to see if that shows up at least as far as end product, but at least he's getting close. He almost scored the winner, and D-Lap as well. Getting on the score sheet. Looks strong versus Liverpool. He was so strong that he forced Arne Slot to take Kwanzaa off to bring in Kanate. He's not shy going for goal from the shooting range that he showed, and very strong in the air and strong ball carrier. So very good for Delap to start his EPL career as well. Jacob Greaves has been very good in the opening few games, strong in the air, good with the ball at his feet. Uh, with the long hair, he looks like a British version of Calafiore. He's not really the same player, but they picked him out from Hull City, and all of a sudden he looks quite comfortable, at least in the league so far. And maybe the only negative is Muric being their number one is a bit surprising to me because I didn't feel like the keeper was really the problem versus Liverpool. I thought, if anything, the problem was maybe a little bit more kind of Leif Davis. So that's maybe being a little negative, but uh, yeah, again, talent wise, maybe they have the worst, the least experienced like EPL side, but already the eye test says they're already even competitive wise with Fulham. So that's something maybe for Fulham fans to worry about a bit. But Fulham are going to be better, in my opinion, with adding in Sandberg. They've lost something so massive with the Alpalenia, and what they've been doing so far hasn't worked. And I can't imagine Marcus Silva is going to allow that to fester. I think Silva's very good at making adjustments himself as a coach. I imagine immediately or very soon Sanderberger, because he came on it as a sub. Sanderberger is going to come in as a place to fit in here. If not, you also have, Tom Carney, that can factor in, that we saw versus Man United. Uh, there's also, Harrison Reed, that can play next to Lukic. You have a ways to make this less a little bit chaotic, at least. And I don't really like Pereira playing that deep. I also don't really love Pereira and ESR playing together. I feel like that's almost like playing Bruno and Mason Mount together. You're playing two tens unless you kind of play a formation that allows you to play two tens. I just feel like that's a little strange. Or you can play Smith Rowe off the left, and you can make him play inside. And that's kind of what they were doing with William, anyways, because you always have Anthony Robinson making those runs, and he basically becomes your winger. That's maybe one way you can do it. Been a bit surprised we haven't necessarily seen that so far. We're playing maybe you play Smith Rowe a little further up, and you find a different way to play Alex Iwobi. But there's a lot of pieces here for Marcus Silva to play with, and we'll see what he does. And then we'll end with Nottingham Forest and Wolves. It ends 1-1. The basically the former Wolves, coach Darby, the Nuno Darby, you can say. Chris Wood gets the goal. He probably could have gotten the game winner, and then Bellegarde maybe had a goal of the weekend as well. He had an amazing hit, but all that happened in the 12th minute, and then kind of all the action, at least for as goals for the game did end. Wolves are just one thing I had, versus, they were unlucky, in my opinion, versus Chelsea. I didn't think they were 6-2 bad, but they were probably 4-2 bad, which isn't really great. They've lost a lot of pieces. They've lost Max Kilman now. Before that, they lost Nathan Collins. Uh, they've lost Pedro Neto as well. And before that, they lost Adama and they lost, well, Jimenez, and then they lost Mourinho or Moutinho. They also lost Ruben Neves. That's a lot of turnover, really, over a few years. And so you do Wolves. In my opinion, of all the teams, I think I was most worried about Wolves to start the season. So I don't feel like I'm flip flopping. I do still think it's Wolves, and I worry a little bit for Gary O'Neill. One thing I think about is he's very good at allowing his players to play free, and you see players like Ait Nouri really enjoy that. But the problem about that is you got to have everyone else that's really good at recognizing that, and sometimes uh, they can be a little structureless. I think the lack of structure for them is a problem. They definitely saw that with Chelsea, and I feel like because they've lost some of their better players, I feel like that's starting to show. It doesn't really feel like there's necessarily attacking patterns or there's build up patterns. It's very very one dimensional. It's very we'll see what the situation gives us and then we'll go. It's not necessarily to say that that's that that's a bad way to go about it because if nothing else, they are very entertaining on the eye. They're not robotic. It just feels like they maybe could be a little bit give and go here. I do worry a little bit for Wolves, and I worry about for Gary O'Neill because I don't want him to. I want him to be the kind of the sacrifice here, but that's at least my feelings coming into this to start. One thing to say is they did make some business at the end. They did bring in Andre Fluminense, a guy that was linked to Liverpool a couple of years back. That I actually just wanted them to sign, just to sign anyone, because I was like, well, Thiago isn't working, and you need someone in there, but they never did. So that's kind of where we are. Semedo was back. We did see a little bit of a change. We saw Ait Nori almost played kind of higher up, and we saw Dawson. Dawson had missed that last game versus Chelsea, so they were better defensively, but only just. I mean, Nottingham Forest still had 16 shots. Wolves did not had a whole lot here. 11 shots, only 3 on target. Not 48% of the ball and 279 passes. It's a team that just feels a little incomplete at the minute, and that is where we are there. Also, maybe the best side or best news of the game was Mario Lemina not getting seriously hurt when it looked like he maybe did. Cunha and Larson so far do have some pretty good chemistry together, especially they showed versus Chelsea. So that's at least something there. They have brought in Andre, but again, they've lost a whole lot, and they've but losing Neto. They do have Rodrigo Gomez and Gonzalo Guedes. Maybe they need to kind of step up a little bit. They just and defensively they're all over the place. Mosquera, who has been a little bit of a hit and miss as well. He made a big mistake for Chelsea for one of those early goals when the game was still kind of tied. So that's kind of where Wolves are. And then with Forest actually are kind of fun now. With Nuno Espirito Santo, I wouldn't have imagined saying that about Forest. And one of the reasons they're fun is Gibbs White is fun, and he allows Gibbs White to express himself a little bit in this side. A lot of it goes to him. So they have that, but they have like a number 9 that really knows what he is, and it's just he's not a fluke. He knows what his role is, and his role is to be in the box. He makes good runs when he is in the box, and when he gets onto the ball, he makes good decisions on it. He's got a good strike on him, good finish on him. The only time I remember him like making a mistake last season was for Man City. Unfortunately enough. Another positive was Elliot Anderson, the player that they spent a lot of money to get from Newcastle. They got Chris Wood from Newcastle. Maybe they wanted to do it again. Some business with them. They brought in Elliot Anderson, and he was maybe man of the match. The way he was able to maneuver the ball a little bit more in the midfield. They played him a little bit deeper, but he had a little license to go forward, and just the way he was combining as well. And so far, another thing too to say about Forest is a lot of the players that they brought in last season are really starting to work for them. Ole Aina, each game is very very good for them. You got Elanga and Callum Hudson-Odoi that are both very good 1v1 on the wings. Ibrahim Sangare, they spent a lot of money for him as well. It took a while to find his sea legs. He's starting to be quite a good consistent player week in for week out for them. So there's a lot of positives for Forest, and Forest would be a team that I would be worried about coming into the season, and at least so far they've been quite good. So that is where we are for uh, game week 2 and 3, and so we'll see how we're doing for time. It's probably terrible, but it is terrible. So, anyways, that'll be it, and then you stay squatting and stop recording.